welcome to the 389th episode of the Random Podcast from Heck. My name is Tony. This is the podcast about random things in the world of entertainment, which includes movies, TV shows, and comic books. Big shout out to Andrew Loken. He is a big supporter of the show. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Any amount you can commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the secret podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 minutes of podcast entertainment every single week. Last week I did an Off My Mind episode about Severance, so I really dived into just the whole idea about it, not specific like current episodes, but just the main idea of what it means to be severed, and could that work in real life? Should that work in real life? Sometimes I talk about comics. I've been recently talking about Stan Lee, John Romita Sr. era of Amazing Spider-Man, and it's been a blast going back looking at those issues. So we'll see. I haven't decided what I'm going to do this week. It will maybe more Spider-Man. We'll see. But if you can't commit to a monthly commitment, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or 3. That's ko-fi.com/gmanfromheck. And as I've mentioned before, with these like Off My Mind, these podcast episodes, if you're like, well, I don't know, I don't really want to make a Patreon account and do all that stuff, you can also purchase individual episodes for like the same price as like a virtual coffee. So you can like get the Severance episode or other past Off My Mind episodes for $3, $4.50 if you're using the iOS app because they charge you 30%. So just go to your web browser and patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Etc., right? So this week, what do we have? We kind of, sort of have 2 movie features, sort of. The main feature is Hard Eyes. So this is the latest, slasher movie, but it's a little bit more than that. It has Olivia Holt in it, and I think she's super cool. I've got to I think I've interviewed her, I don't know if it's 3 times. I should like look back. I could figure it out. But I've interviewed her a few times for Cloak and Dagger. And she's always been like, I've always thought she was like really cool and just really, really polite and professional and all that. She was in that show Cruel Summer, which I highly recommend that if you haven't seen it. I believe I talked about that on the podcast. So that's you could watch it on Hulu. It was like a freeform, ABC's freeform thing, and it was kind of freaky in a way. I guess it's about a girl who was like abducted, and then this other girl kind of takes her life, but it takes place over like 3 years. It goes back and forth between the 3 different like eras, and so I think they did a really good job with that. It's like what happened, what's the real story. But Hard Eyes is the current movie, so you can check that out. And I think it's interesting when trying to make a new like slasher movie. Like I don't know if they're necessarily going for a franchise here, because with each movie, I think you got to be careful with that, because if you try like setting up like, oh, we're gonna have this long-term thing, that's not really a good idea, because then it feels too forced. So this one, there's definitely your like resolution to the story, whatever, does it continue? But I don't think worry about that later, because it's always so easy to look at Scream, how that ended. Like, oh wait, it's still going. So we can hear about that. The other movie, the reason I say sort of, because it's a movie from 1987. And I've probably talked about it on the Secret podcast. I've probably done like an episode. Well, actually, I don't know if I have with the first movie. We're going to talk about 1987's Hellraiser, Clive Barker's Hellraiser. Why am I talking about that now? I mean, we're not in 1987. We're a little past that. The reason is they released a remastered, like it's on Blu-ray, like Arrow video, and they did one of those Fathom events. It was like 2 nights whatever thing. So they were showing Hellraiser, and I'm like, Hellraiser Master. It's like, yeah, I want to see it in a theater, because honestly, I don't think I ever saw it in a theater. I'm trying to think when it came, 1987. I remember like seeing it right around there, but I don't know if I actually did see it in a theater. I don't know, but so I did now. So I'll just talk briefly about that, and just stuff about the movie and everything like that. Then so here's now a little thing. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, 3 episodes. I promise I'm going to try not to complain about this release schedule. Okay, so what I will say, they released 3 episodes this week. I'm only going to talk about 2 episodes. They're releasing 3 episodes next week, so I'm going to start getting behind, but that's how it goes, right? So you can hear about 2 episodes. I have an episode of Harley Quinn. This is kind of a weird episode. We'll see. And then we have Prime Target and Severance, so I'm still behind on those, but we will get caught up at some point. And then we have some news and comics. So with the news, we got a Fantastic Four trailer, and I did watch it. I'm always kind of hesitant with these because, when you look forward to these, we had the teaser trailer before, and then they dropped like the regular trailer. And I'm always at that point where it's like, I kind of don't want to watch it because I don't want to get spoiled by things. But on the other hand, it's like, it's like I need to watch it so I can talk about it on the podcast and that. And also there's also the just curiosity. I was like, I need to see what happens or what it looks like. You definitely get a good feel of the vibe, and it just really feels different. And it's just like, whoa, and it's like really cool. It's like, what is happening here? Whoa. And part of it is like, okay, this is an alternate, this is a 1960s whatever version, alternate reality Marvel. So I was like, okay, I can dig it. Let's do that. It's still the question of, are they going to merge them somehow? Because I feel like with Secret Wars or whatever, somehow, and I don't even know if it's going to be like a Beyonder, doing something, but I feel like somehow they're going to get pulled together. And then the Fantastic Four is sadly going to lose their world and end up in a main 616, or maybe they won't. And I don't think you necessarily have to bring them into, we want them to merge so we can have interaction, so you can have cameos and all that. But at the same time, maybe just set up a different sub-universe. We'll see what happens, but I'm looking forward to Fantastic Four. I think it's going to be cool. I'm just really curious, how are they going to update and everything. But of course, I did have one complaint, and I guess kind of thankfully, I'm not the only one to complain about it. Apparently, people are not super duper crazy about the Thing's voice. It's fine, but it's the actor's voice. It should be, it should be a lower voice. He's made of stone. His vocal cords are stone. And that's the other thing, that if he undergoes this transformation, now I'm getting technical, are his internal organs, have they been transformed or not? And I guess that's the other thing. It's not like, I don't think Ben Grimm has like a stone tongue. His eyes aren't stone, but would he have like the same vocal cords? Because the vocal cords, I'm assuming, I'm no anatomy doctor or whatever. I'm assuming the vocal cords, the shape and form, all that kind of determines your voice, your pitch and all that. Just the way it's housed in there, and the shape and the size and all that, right? Maybe. So if all of a sudden he's grown, he's got to be a little bit bigger. I find it hard to believe that his vocal cords are the same size as when he was human. I would think that they have grown or stretched or something. Would that change his voice? I don't know. I just feel like it should be lower. And that could be a tough thing where you're going to hire someone to play the Thing, to play Ben Grimm, and then you're like, okay, you're going to be, maybe if we show the origin, we'll do that. But for the majority of the time, you're just going to be CG. And we can use you for motion capture, but it's not going to be you. So now the other thing, you can say, okay, yeah, I'll do it because you're using my voice. Cool, I'm the voice of the Thing. Awesome. Hey, kids, I'm the voice of the Thing. But then if you're like, okay, we're going to use you, but we're going to lower your voice. So like, we're going to post-production, whatever you call it. We're going to modify your voice and lower it a couple octaves or something like that. And then that could be kind of a bummer because you can say, yeah, that's my voice. And you're like, no, it's not. You don't sound like that. I think they should lower it. So we'll find out. Going back to Armor Wars, it came up again. It's no longer an active development, which, I think so that doesn't necessarily mean it's canceled. But, there is this big thing where they're like, okay, we're cutting back. People are complaining about comic book movies, fatigue or whatever. So we're only going to do a couple things. We're not doing that. So maybe that's the case. I don't know. Moon Knight season 2. What about that? There's still nothing official. There's always been rumors, people talking about, I mean, just like a couple weeks ago, they're like, Moon Knight's going to appear in Avengers, Secret Wars or something. But now there's talking about, oh no, there's, there's some rumbling about season 2, about villains or whatever, and, this or that. And I'll believe it when I see it, when something's official. And I really think it comes down to, because, some people are like, also like, oh, is it because they're doing a Midnight Suns? What's the delay and everything? I think it's because Oscar Isaac's just busy. And, this is what I've said when people are like, what do you think about Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight? I think he's a great actor. He did a really good job in the show. But the problem is can he commit to the schedule that may be required? And I guess, also Disney Plus, they haven't really pushed a whole lot of season 2s. We're saying, are we going to actually see some now? It looks like, but if the fact that we have nothing, there's like been no mention of a season 2. I mean, it's concerning. I want to believe that it's because Oscar Isaac is busy. He's in demand. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe they're like, okay, we haven't even started thinking about writing scripts. So I don't know, but. I mean, I wish I want more, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess. What about X-Men? We're getting all this rumblings about X-Men, X-Men reboots and all this. And I guess, they're talking about like, production windows coming up, or they're going to start stuff. So people are like, we're going to get some casting announcements soon. It's like, are we really? Because you have to figure out what movie, how does that work? Because, you need to figure out which character is going to use, when are you going to start filming? So maybe if there's a production date, or like, we're going to do an X-Men movie, we're going to start in like, April or, November. And then you have to figure out, okay, well, what characters we want, what's our story? You really, I feel like, and this is kind of like James Gunn thing, you need a script before you can do anything. And because James Gunn says, no movie will be greenlit until there's a script. And that makes a lot of sense, because you can't start pre-production if you don't know who's going to be in a movie. It's one thing if you're like, pre-production on Spider-Man, okay, and maybe you can figure out what other characters are going to be in here, but you can start doing something. But when you're talking something like the X-Men, it's like, there's like a million people, like who's going to be in it, and where are you going to start? Are you going to start with the original 5? But then there's rumors about Gambit and Kitty Pryde. There's another rumor about someone else being cast as Kitty Pryde, or in talks for it. No one's cast. I forgot who it was, or what else she was on. But then I think there was like also like Mystique, and it's frustrating for me, looking at all this stuff, because I don't know what to believe, and there's like all these different rumor people talking about stuff, and I'm just super skeptical, and I just wonder, is like if someone just talking out of their butt, hoping to get some, and maybe they'll be right, or oh no, they changed their mind, they're going a new direction, but they were going to do that. It's like, okay, yeah, sure they were. I don't know, but it's just ridiculous. I don't think this is a spoiler, but apparently in Captain America: Brave New World, they're going to bring in adamantium, which is a weird thing to think about. So they're going to introduce it. It's going to be discovered or whatever, and it's going to have something to do with that celestial body from Eternals. But then, so it's like, okay, we got adamantium. That means, or does that mean we're going to have Wolverine soon? But then that also means, okay, so Wolverine doesn't have adamantium, but he doesn't have to have it yet, because it's just, this whole timeline thing is weird. The fact that, we were like, how long and how far into the MCU are we? Like 15 years? Getting close to that? Maybe not quite 15. Well, and the fact that there's no mutants, there's no Professor X, there's no Magneto. So Wolverine must be out there somewhere. Is he like just savage in the Canadian Rockies? Are there Rockies in Canada? I don't even know. And this other thing was a little weird. There's some mention like, is Sam Wilson going to take the super soldier serum? Is Anthony Mackie going to? But it's weird to people talk about that, because why is there even thought that, oh, you're Captain America, so you should take the super soldier serum. But I guess I look at it in the comics, Sam Wilson doesn't. So it just seems weird that it's even a consideration. And I do think it's a little weird that you have a Captain America that doesn't, that or not that he has to take it, but I guess, because Falcon is a guy that flies. I guess one of the things that kind of I'm kind of curious about, you see in a trailer where he slices a truck with his wings. But he's just a regular guy, and that's kind of the point. He's like the everyman Captain America, so you don't need to have a super soldier serum. But I don't know, and I guess the fact that we had Bucky Barnes as Captain America in the comics, I thought that was cool. But that would also be, I don't know if people would accept that considering what Bucky has done. I don't know, who knows? But yeah, just ideas like. Anthony Mackie says he's not going to take. He probably won't take it. It's like, who even brought it up? I never even considered it. That you're Captain America, so you have to have it. It's just such a weird thing. What about Black Panther stuff? T'Challa. So the question is T'Challa already going to recast? And they talked to someone talked to like the producer guy, and he's like, there's no truth to any of that because we're not even working on it yet. I guess Ryan Coogler's working on Sinners, so they're not even thinking about T'Challa recasting. They probably have ideas. Obviously if they know Denzel Washington is going to be in it, they have an idea what the character. And I think they said something like he's actually be like in canon in the MCU. I'm not really sure. What do you mean by that? It doesn't mean that they're not going to do it, but there's like, no, we're not doing anything just yet. So okay. There's another rumor. Kelsey, is this an actual rumor? Or is this another grasping at straws? Kelsey Grammer Beast may appear in Avengers Doomsday. I don't know. I guess because my thinking of Avengers Doomsday, and I'm obviously I'm probably totally wrong, but I picture Avengers Doomsday as like an alternate multiverse, whatever, where Robert Downey Jr. becomes Doctor Doom for whatever reason, instead of becoming Iron Man. I don't necessarily think that has anything to do with like Secret Wars, but if we're talking about this other reality and then you're throwing in all these other people, this person is going to be this person. I mean, that seems like it would be more like a Secret Wars thing. And again, who knows what they're going to do with Secret Wars? Doesn't mean the Beyonder is going to come and grab a bunch of people, but maybe they could, and that could be a way to bring in Hugh Jackman Wolverine or Deadpool or whoever you want, from different franchises, different things, because they're being pulled in from all over the place. But if you bring in Beast, is it going to be just because we saw him in the end credits of a certain movie, the Marvels, or is it just the fact that it's just a coincidence because multiverse and you could have infinite number of Beasts that look like Kelsey Grammer, but may not be the Kelsey Grammer Beast that we saw in the previous movies? And that's the other thing, that like the Beast that we saw recently, is that the same? I don't know if they've confirmed that, but who knows? The last bit of news, Rob Liefeld has commented that he's done with Marvel, that he's no longer going to be doing anything at Marvel. And here's where it's like, okay, and because he does have a point. He's kind of hurt and he's kind of bummed with the way he's being treated. He's saying that Marvel, or he's saying like Kevin Feige, whatever, that they don't treat creators as well as they should. And we heard some stuff like Ed Brubaker has made some comments about like Winter Soldier and that. So this is where we get into the tricky area, where yes, create you can't have the characters without the creators, but how much do they owe to them? I mean they do owe everything to that, but what does necessarily that mean? You get your things. And there should have been some payment, and part of the tricky part is if you're doing like work for hire, you create, because I always felt like, okay, if you're going to work for Marvel or you're going to work for DC, you're getting paid whatever your salary is or whatever per issue, you're getting paid for that. You're also getting your name put out in front of a large bunch of readers, because like if you're like, I'm going to make my own character, Garbage Man X. I could, like me personally, Tony, I could make this comic, Garbage Man X, put out this comic. No one's going to read it because who's going to know that this thing even exists? Versus if I got hired at Marvel and I was like, hey, I got this idea, this Garbage Man X. Do you want to like do something? And they're like, okay, yeah, cool. But now we own it. And then people will see it because Marvel's putting it out there and they got the backing. So there's that, and like the whole other thing where I've always been so surprised that Dan Slott has no interest in doing any like creator-owned stuff. He's been super happy, more than content, working with Marvel, doing She-Hulk, or all the Spider-Man stuff that he's done. He's had a blast with that because he loves those characters. But you just have to I don't know. You look at how these things work, and I've been talking to a friend about this, and it's also weird when you look at like who Deadpool was. Because I feel like, and again, my opinion, I feel like the Deadpool that we first saw in New Mutants '98 is not the same Deadpool that we have now in the comics. He's evolved. You can say the same thing about Superman. It's the Superman that Siegel and Schuster created. He didn't even fly, and there was no kryptonite. There was no Lex Luthor. None of that stuff happened in the beginning, but because of the hard work, the creative process of all the writers and artists over the years, they all contribute to that. So when you put that together as a whole, these are all the different people who have helped shape this. So when I look at Deadpool now, and because recently I did look back at New Mutants '98, and I felt like Deadpool was a little different. He wasn't. He was annoying. He was still kind of like the merc with the mouth or whatever, because Cable wanted to break his jaws to shut him up or whatever. But I feel like he wasn't quite as funny, even though he was trying to, I don't know. And I don't know if it was like Joe Casey, or you can even say like Ryan Reynolds. He added a lot of stuff too. So it's just, yes, Deadpool was super popular when he debuted. Because like New Mutants, it went back to print. Then there's X-Force, and I guess the letters. There are letters. I haven't seen the letters, but apparently, there's all these people writing in. We want more Deadpool, more Cable, and all this stuff. Awesome, great. But also, that popularity then is different than now. So I don't know. We have all this stuff, but I'm not knocking that. Rob Liefeld, Fabian, they created Deadpool, or Rob Liefeld, even if you just say, he designed the look and all that stuff. He's a creator. He owes a lot to that. But apparently, he's not happy for different reasons, and this is where it gets a little tricky. I think one of the things he said that, like, at a red carpet somewhere, Kevin Feige was like close to him and didn't acknowledge him or anything like that. I feel like when you're at an event like that, especially you're on camera, you're answering questions and you're dodging questions and you're doing all this stuff like that. You're not necessarily gonna say, hey, wait, all these cameras, all these people are waiting. Got these limited, small windows of to talk to all these people. You're not gonna say, oh wait, hey, how you doing? I don't know. There's a time and place, but apparently, he's upset. Because he did a full on his podcast. He did a whole thing about this, and I haven't listened to it, but I saw like summaries about this, and he's posted some stuff on like Instagram and that, where he's talking about like not being invited to some of the premieres, but more so like the after parties. Like I think with Deadpool and Wolverine, him and his family weren't invited to the after party, and that's where it's like, I don't know, because he's a creator. And being invited to an after party with like cast and crew, and it's one thing. It's like, okay, yeah, invite him, but his whole family, because there was an image that he posted it like on his Facebook and probably Instagram, where his family's there, and he's got a beautiful family, he's blessed, he's got I think 2 sons and a daughter, and they look so happy, and so I am happy for him. But there was one image where there was someone else there. It's like, I don't know if it was one of the son's girlfriends at the premiere. And I don't know. I feel like if you're going to an after party, it would be like maybe you and a plus one, but like you and your whole family, and maybe even where like some of your family's underage. I don't know if they're all of age now. I can't keep track, but it just seems weird because when you're talking about like after party, even with that, you're limited like how many people can enter. Where's this after party at? And if everyone wants bring in their whole family, it's going to get out of hand. So you have to limit things, and I don't know. So it seems weird, but apparently. At Deadpool and Wolverine, he posts for photos with like some creatives, with the Deadpool and Wolverine, team and something like that. But then his publicist, I guess, told him that the photos were deleted, that they were taken as a courtesy and they weren't intended to be used, even though there were some pictures that were like on some Disney something. And then, when Hollywood Reporter did an interview with him on that's it, I'm not working at Marvel anymore because, he's did his last comic or something like that. And then he wrote, in the Twitter, or the tweet, the X, whatever, not so much as a single handshake, classless. And I don't know if that meant if he's like, okay, I'm done, this is my last Marvel comic, and then no one gave him a handshake. But it's like, when would that opportunity come up? I mean, he's working from home. It's not like he's working in a Marvel office. And it's not like Kevin Feige is going to fly out to give him a handshake. I don't know. And maybe I don't have all the stories, but it's an unfortunate because I know he's really excited. He loves Deadpool. He's it's the enthusiasm he has. It's nice to see. He's very proud of that. But I don't know. So no more Rob Liefeld at Marvel. And I don't even understand like what happened at DC because he was at DC. Then I thought he's like, I'm not working at DC anymore, and then he was back at DC, and he was at DC because he wasn't going to be at Marvel. Then he was at Marvel, but does he have rights to Youngblood back? Because there's like a whole thing with that. Maybe he should focus on that. Will Youngblood ever get the spotlight that like Deadpool has? We'll have to wait and see. But you will not have to wait and see what's next because that's just the news for the week. We got more. We got so much more. Oh my goodness. Okay, with comic books, there was a new Gotcha comic, and I just didn't even know. I saw when I saw the cover, I was like, "Ooh, this looks like is this like a classic? Is this like something I never heard of?" No, it's a new one. It's Tommy Lee Edwards writes it. Nuno Platti does the art, and it's a Gotcha Only One Earth, and it's a 4-issue series, and it's pretty cool. It has a really nice feel to it, and it's kind of a basic story, but it's kind of cool. Birdcast is ravaging the country of Atrina for rare mythical elements that can create a psychic link between Galactor pilots and their weaponized mechs. As Joe and Ken's friendship is pushed to the limit during a mission to save Atrina's princess, the science ninja team uncovers an ancient temple that may hold the key to defeating Galactor once and for all. So basically, we don't see all of that in this first issue, but basically Ken and Joe, they're working, because there's going to be this big race, and they're trying to protect this princess who is now queen in this foreign country, and Joe, right? Ken, Joe. I always forget, like I get mixed up on their names because I'm used to Battle of the Planet names, but he's a race car driver, so he's going to be racing. Ken is Ken the Eagle, right? Ken is supposed to be like his mechanic or whatever. The point is the winner of this Grand Prix that they're doing gets like the King's Medal and gets invited to dinner with the Queen and all that. So they're like, yeah, that Galactor is going to use that to try to get close to the Queen so they can assassinate her. And then Joe's like, "What? That won't happen because it's going to be me up there, getting that award." But Birdcast, which I'm so used to calling him Zoltar or Zoltan, where he basically sets things in motion to really ravage the country. So like during the race, like there's like earthquakes and stuff happening, and it's like over the top. And then it's like, oh no, there's no way Joe could have survived. And So it's just I don't know, really cool. I don't know what it is. I love the Gotchaman characters and just the designs. I'm so like fascinated with them. And so I'm thankful that, you know, we're getting these comics. At Image, we had so Geiger Volume 2 came out. You should check that out. Kaya 25. This was kind of like a one shot, and it's a lot more. It's more about like kind of like just the world and everything like that. You know, there's not so much about like the main characters and all that, but the next issue will be starting up the next story arc. So I mean, there's just a nice charm to this comic. There's, I don't know, something about it that just really I find, you know, fascinating. Rockefeller's number 3 came out. So this is crazy. I feel like we've had more than 3 issues. So this is Peter Tomasi and Francis Manapul. You know, this is under, you know, the Ghost Machine label, and it's just, so basically the Rockefellers are from the 25th century. They're kind of like on the run, so they're hiding in the year 2025, and just trying to, you know, survive in the past, and, you know, just deal with, you know, avoiding what's going on. There's some people that are going to be like hunting them, but, you know, if you're looking through an entire time stream or whatever, you know, how do you track down, you know, whoever you're looking for? But there's some cool elements and everything like that. So maybe that's not the best explanation, but it's just really good. You should check it out. Let's see, Sacrificers 14. Someday maybe I'll get caught up to that. And then Walking Dead Deluxe. So issue 106 came out. I had fallen behind. I'm almost caught up. I think I just read 105 or something like that. So I'm almost there. And so it's as I keep saying, you know, it's kind of fun just going back and seeing these classic. Are they classic? But seeing like the old Walking Dead stories, like, you know, so, you know, we've just finally seen Negan, and when like Carl sneaks away over to, like, you know, to infiltrate Negan's world, and yeah, so it's fun seeing them, and in color too. You know, the black and whites were classic, were great, but it is cool seeing them in color as well. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but it was weird that there wasn't a whole lot of other comics. So like at Marvel, very few comics, and the same thing with DC. At Marvel, we had Avengers 23, and this is continuing the story where Black Cat is teaming up with Kang, and they're trying to, they've stolen something from a collector, and the Avengers were trying to get it as well. So, you know, it's like this race to get this item thing. What's weird is I saw a thing about how, you know, all this stuff with Avengers, there's a lot of stuff with Kang, you know, planned. And I think the idea was because of all the Kang dynasty, whatever, all the stuff in the movies. But then since Kang is no longer the main focus in the movies, they kind of are shifting the focus in the comics as well, which, I don't know, it seems kind of silly. So we'll see where it can go. We find out, okay, why would Black Cat team up with Kang the Conqueror, or why would he want to team up with her, you know, vice versa. But we find out, like, what would get her to work with King, and so forth. So it's kind of interesting to see, you know, where is this going to go. We had a Namor in issue 7. I'm not reading that. Phoenix number 8. Oh, so now I had a lot of comics this week, and I apologize for this because I don't know if this is, like, you know, going to bum you out or just be annoying. But there's just a lot of comics I'm reading this, and it's the point where it's like I'm not like super duper loving this, and so it's like it's not you, it's me. Is it me? Or it's so hard for me. I mean, you know, if you've been listening to me, you know I love comics. I adore comics. I'm obsessed with comics almost. But a lot of the comics that I read these days, I'm just like, I mean, I'm still supremely, you know, interested in what these characters are, you know, what's going to happen, how are they going to develop and everything. But a lot of times I'll start reading, and then I'm just like, ugh. And then I just start skimming, and then it's like I can't even read it. It's like I don't want to read it. So with Phoenix, I love Jean Grey, and Jean Grey is Phoenix, and it was such a cool idea and everything. But I'm just, maybe because we're in issue 8, and it's like, okay, waiting for stuff to happen. And yes, she's going up against Thanos, and there's a lot of crazy stuff, but maybe this is also falling in the fact that it's a lot of like the Marvel cosmic stuff, which I'm not super duper crazy about. I don't know, but I'm going to keep reading it. But then we had Power Man Timeless #1. I'm like, what? What the heck is? Why? Where did we? I don't even remember when this was. Was it last year, or was it longer than last year? We had some event. I think it was on a lot of annuals where we saw this kind of like future, whatever. These characters in a far off or whatever, and. Yeah, so I barely remember what happened, but now we're going back to Luke Cage. It's like, what? And what kind of bums me out, I was like, I'm not going to read that. One, I was like, I don't have time to read that. The stories were okay from what I recall. I don't even remember how it ended, like what was going on. But the thing is, like, it's this issue is drawn by Bernard Chang. So I'm like, and I didn't read that because, I really like Bernard as a person and as an artist. But I don't. It's just one of those things where, okay, this is this future story. Why am I reading this? What is this? To invest my time in reading this. Is this just a one shot? Is this going to continue? I don't know, because I didn't even know it was coming out. Scarlet Witch #9. I kind of wish I was caught up on this. Maybe someday I will. I don't know. We got Black Cat on the cover here. It's like, whoa, Black Cat is getting around. She's kind of busy. Spirit of Vengeance is out. I guess that's Johnny Blaze on the cover. No idea. The Spectacular Spider-Man issue 12. Wait, I don't even. Wait. No, I thought I flipped through this. I don't know why I would flip through this, but I looked the cover. You got both Electros on there. I don't remember Electros. Did I not flip through the whole thing? I don't know. This comic. Oh my God! It's just. I don't understand. It just like one of the things I saw, because one of the main things in this comic, which is kind of interesting, whatever. Peter and Miles, they're like, hey, let's make it a thing where we meet up like once a week and we'll get coffee. So they've been going to this coffee place, and because of that, they've kind of developed like some supporting characters and stuff that they've got pulled into like this big crazy whatever story adventure thing. And one of the things is, because they go there all the time now, they've had like drinks, their order. And as other people are like, the Thing is there, and Human Torch is there, and there's and Spider-Man's like, this one's called a Parker. This one's called a Parker. And it's like, what are you doing? I mean, you're trying to give away your secret identity? And it's like, why would you be so excited? Like, if this one's called the Joe Schmo coffee drink, I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to call it that. It's just, you got two great characters. How is this comic not so great? The Legacy of Vader, Star Wars Legacy of Vader, issue 1. When I looked at this, I'm like, should I read this comic? I mean, we're talking Kylo Ren. What does that mean? Is this, I mean, this is going to be like in between the movies? There's not going to be anything new development, right? But then I was like, oh, Charles Soule is writing it, and Charles Soule is awesome. So I did read it, and we do get little bits like, okay, what happened after? I just forgot his name. What was it? The dude that they killed? There's this Snoke. That's it, right? Supreme Leader Snoke or something. Isn't it something else? I'm not going to open up the comic, look at it. But we see Kylo Ren talking to people like, this was your leader, he was killed, and I am going to now lead you. And they're like, ah, or something like that. I don't know. Maybe exaggerating a little bit. But so there's little bits, and then Kylo does make a decision to go somewhere too, which is kind of cool to see like where that's going to go. But I don't know. We'll see. Then we have the Ultimates issue 9, and this was basically an Ultimate Luke Cage story, which is cool. His story is it sucks for him. So I don't know where this is going to go, but yeah. And we have this like timeline, like when the maker is going to come back, and what does this mean? And we'll see, I guess. Wolverine #5. I haven't been reading Wolverine, but I was like, oh, they have Laura Kinney Wolverine, X-23 Wolverine. It's like, okay, I got to read this, and I wish I did. So just what's going on is there's someone called adamantine or something like that is like, I think, affecting people with adamantium or something like that. And then, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I think they're listed as like the main thing in the next issue. I don't know. So I'm going to spoil it now, maybe. Romulus appears here. I was like, ugh. I still don't know the full story of Romulus, like where he came, like what is the deal, because I just didn't care. When that came up, I'm like, wait, what? There's something with Dakin and the Masha Musha, something blade. It's like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, so we have that. And that's crazy. But see, and that's the other thing. Why am I not digging this Wolverine comic? What is wrong with me that I'm not digging it? And I think part of the thing also, because he's hanging out with this new Wendigo, because like Laura was about to like kill him, and Wolverine's like, no, wait, and she's like, what? But he's supposed to be like in seclusion or whatever, even though he's still hanging out with Moonbeam, with Rogue, Anna Maria, whatever. So it's like, I don't know how this all fits together. At DC Comics, we had Absolute Superman #4. This is really cool. I'm digging it. But with this issue, I don't know if it was like a time thing where as I'm reading it, then I'm like wanting to like skim, because there was a lot of text, I feel. And I'm like, okay, I need to get to the next one. I need to get to the next one. And so there's a lot going on, and it's also, it's such a different direction, and it's weird. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I mean, it's like I said, it is cool that we're definitely getting like different flavors of these characters. But seeing like where Lois is, and we see Jimmy in here, and Jimmy's like, he's definitely up to some different stuff. So it's a cool book, but yeah, I need to slow down and just like kind of take this all in. Speaking of taking everything in, Batman 157. Whew. This issue. Okay, let me just say, I love Chip Zdarsky. I think he's a great writer. I think he's a hilarious person. He writes a lot of funny stuff. But and his Batman's been pretty cool. But oh my goodness, some of the stuff that happens here. I mean, Batman is amazing. Batman can do like almost anything. But there's some stuff that he does. Okay, so there's this tech that like the Riddler has played a big role in taking, and this tech can like basically hack into like any code or system, whatever. And so Batman's like, we need to, he's trying to stop. Oh, because there's like these Russian dudes involved with taking it. He's about to like leave. He hops in a plane. Batman, so he has a grappling hook. He has to fight his way into it. It's like, so that's like, wow, okay, that's impressive. And then he needs to stop the plane. But then the plane's like, I'm spoiling things, but then the plane's starting to go down. So they're going to like smash to the city. But then Batman's like, and it's kind of clever. It's like, okay, we're going to hit 85th Street or whatever it is. And he's like, it's 90 feet wide, but the plane is it's like 85 feet wide, but the plane is 98. So he has to like shorten the wings or something like that. So he has to get on top of the plane and use some like bat explosive stuff. He kicks out like the windshield of the plane. I was like, could you just like kick out a windshield? I mean, I feel like I would want it to be more reinforced than even someone like totally toned legs. I don't feel like they would be able to kick it. I mean, unless it was already under stress and fractured, maybe. But then as it comes down, it smashes into Batman's like, I think he climbed back in. And then as the bad guy, I won't say who, if you're reading, Batman just like flies out of the plane towards this person and like punches him. But it's like, wait, the plane, how fast is this plane coming down? And then if he would hit this guy, he's got all the speed. Maybe I read the comic too fast. I just missed some stuff. I don't know. But there's definitely interesting things here. JSA number 4. So we're getting some development with the JSA has been like basically they're getting super attacked and a lot of bad stuff's going on. One character we'll say Obsidian, like what the heck? Where's Obsidian? What's going on? And so we find out some stuff there, but it's not looking good for them. So yeah, but the team is kind of scattered and yeah. And you see like Dr. Midnight, the newer Dr. Midnight, she's like on her own and okay, she's gonna have her hands full. Justice League the Atom Project. So I think this is the second issue came out. I didn't read the first issue. I feel like I don't know if I should or not, because this is one thing is like, yeah, I probably should, but we'll see if I get around to it. Birds of Prey, issue 18. Love this Kelly Thompson writing. Kelly Thompson's amazing. There's a lot of fun stuff here. And basically, we kind of have like two different like stories going on because with Sin, Black Canary's sister, she's being targeted. So they're like, okay, we're going to try to trap them. We're going to let's set a trap. And then Constantine needs some help with this demon stuff that he's dealing with. So then, since other people aren't there. Oracle's like, well, I can send Big Barda and Batgirl. He's like, okay. So we got these different things happening. Speaking of Batgirl, we have Batgirl number 4. Yeah, well, I'm kind of curious where this is going to go. So Cassandra is kind of like teaming up with her mom, with Lady Shiva. She as much as she doesn't want to. And, there's like all this stuff going on, but there's like all these other people. And we see like Nisa Al Ghul has popped up, even though, wait, isn't she dead? That is discussed. And I feel like, I don't know, there's just like a lot of stuff going on. And so it's like, what's the main focus? Like what's happening? So, yeah. But I do like, I just, there's just something so cool about Batgirl. So I'm glad that she's got this comic, and that is all I read so we had Batman Off-World, which issue 6, and I could be missing out on something really awesome there. I don't know. I haven't given it a chance. We got Shazam number 20. I didn't read this because I haven't been. I'm just like I'm not digging the Shazam book, so I'm going to put my foot down and not read it. But again, I feel like I should be checking out Two-Face number 3. I don't know. I think I heard some good things about that, but I haven't been reading it. And then Poison Ivy 30, the book. This is like my biggest regret that I stopped reading that. And I know it sounds silly when I say that because I could just read it anyways, or I can go back, but that's a lot to catch up with. And I can barely keep up with regular comics as it is, let alone, trying to read 15 issues. But that is going to be it. That is comics for the week. All right, Severance Season 2, Episode 3, Who is Alive? So, okay, as I record this, I haven't, Episode 4 is out. I haven't watched it yet. And I'm just like, all I want to do right now is just go and watch it. And I just don't have time, obviously. But I love this show so much. So it starts off, Ms. Cobell, she was like sleeping in her car, like on the side of the road, but she's kind of still on the road. It's like, just like a 2-lane road, like, and there's just like snow around, like middle of nowhere. And like this bus drives by and like honks, like wakes her up. Her windows are like all fogged up because it's like just cold and everything like that. And then she just starts the engine and starts driving. So it's like, where's she going? What's she doing? Mark gets ready for work. He parks in his car. He's got like the worst spot. He's like so far away. I don't know if they're assigned or what the deal is. And, because also, obviously, he's getting there later because of the staggered time. So he can't get closer or drive closer. Or I don't know. So he looks at his watch and then he starts running. So, it's, because I don't know if he was running late at first I was a little confused because, with their scheduled time, you got to make sure you don't go in the lobby at the same time as someone else, because you don't want to run into someone, even if it's like outside, and then, you see them around town, because they must all, potentially be done in a downtown area. I don't know. So he goes, he goes up to the lady at the front desk, calls someone, and then nods. So I think maybe that was somewhere it's like, okay, you can go there now, it's clear. But then he's timing how long it took to get to the locker, and he keeps counting after like putting his watch in the locker drawer. Then the elevator goes down, and he like zones out. So then we, Mark and Helly, they're printing out like missing signs, like with the photo machine, the photocopy, the Xerox machine. There's like a drawing of Miss Casey. He says that he and Ellie will try to go talk to the goat man, and possibly like other goat people. Mark asked Dylan to hit the new break room. Maybe some of the other departments use it too. And he's like, yeah, maybe later, because he's, seems like he's busy at his desk. And Mark's like, this is kind of important, Dylan. He's like, yeah, I'm in a good groove here, but she's like, don't worry about it. I'll get to it. And Mark's like, okay, well, just show them the sketch. Do not leave it behind. And Irv's going to go to the O&D, where they do the art where Bert worked. And he's like, oh no, that's fine. He's like, I can handle it. And Helly's like, you guys really think that they're going to let us roam around? And Mark's like, they said, on the video that we can go wherever we want. Lumina's listening, remember? And Dylan's like, I thought that meant that they were listening to our conversations. And Irv's like, yeah, he's right, Mark. I did get a hint of the double meaning. And Mark's like, well, and he like sighs. He's like, be discreet. It's like, if they don't know we're doing it, how can they punish us? So Helly turns to Irv, and she's like, hey, you haven't been back there, have you? And he's like, no. And then she kind of like, grabs his hand to comfort him. And she's like, we've got you. He's like, thank you, Helly. So Mark and Helly are walking down the hall, and she's like, so say we find her. And he's like, sorry? She's like, say we get to the goat department, and they're like, yes, Miss Casey's here. She's in the goat cage. He's like, what do we do then? And he's like, well, we get her to the south stairwell. I'll go with her, and once we're out the door, my Audi will know what to do. And she's like, right, well, sounds like you got to figure it out. And she kind of chuckles. Mark stops and looks at her. He's like, are you sure you're okay, helping me out with this? And she's like, yeah, of course. He's like, okay, good. They stare at each other for a long time. It's like, wait, are they going to kiss? Because that's the thing. Obviously, Mark S. and Helly are like each other. They kissed. But now they find out he's married. His Audi's married, but he's not married. So it's like, what does that mean? She could be in there. He doesn't feel anything towards her. He's feeling something for Helly. But if they find her, what does that mean? And if they get her to the outside world, then yeah. So it's like, wait, are they going to kiss? But they don't. So, Mark kind of stammers. They just keep walking. Meanwhile, Milchek has arrived. He has his helmet and leather jacket. He sees like the balloons in the hall that Mark S. left, I'm assuming. They're partially deflated, just kind of like hanging midair. He just kind of grabs them kind of like forcibly. Dylan is capturing numbers. He's working at his desk doing whatever they're doing. And then Irv like talks to him. And Dylan's like, I thought you were going to O&D. And he's like, I've recreated the paintings. He's like, the one I told you about, the ones my Audi was working on? And Dylan's like, what? He says what so many times. He's like, what? And Irv's like, you see, I've been thinking, maybe the hallway is really down here. Maybe that's what my dreams have been. We could look for it, Dylan. We could go today. You could accompany me. And he's like, yeah, maybe, or maybe you go yourself, like for stealth, It's like, I can't really explain. And then there's like footsteps, and Miss Huang, Irv walks up to her, like points to a button on his jacket. He's like, hall pass, and then he leaves. And then Dylan's like, everything chill, and she smiles. Dylan G, come with me, please. So it's like, is he in trouble? Milchek enters his office. And there's this lady there. At first I was like, wait, who is this? It's Natalie. I didn't recognize her at first. And she's like, good morning, Seth. And he's like, Natalie? And she's like, looks like your balloons could use some coffee. He's like, they were in the, she's like, she just like cuts him off. I've got the board. And he's like, of course. So there's like static feedback. And he's like, hello? And then she's just like smiling because, she's got the little like earpiece in. The board says hello. So they never talk directly. It's like, why is that? It's so weird. It's like, is there really a board? And the thing about Natalie, I mean, she's got like this biggest grin like on her face, and it's like, obviously it's just like a forced grin, but I mean, there's something about like, I mean, the way she plays this character is just like really, really amazing. So, just static. And Milchick's like, hello, I want to thank the board humbly for my recent betterment. And she holds up a finger to stop him. And she's like, pause. She's like, the board says you're welcome. The board is jubilant at your ascendance. Everyone uses like such big words, like whatever, fancy words. It wants you to feel appreciated and asks if you do. And Milchick's like, I do. So a little pause. And she's like, the board austerely desires you to feel connected to Lumen's history. To that end, please accept from the board these inclusively canonicalized paintings intended to help you see yourself in Kier, our founder. So there's this little box. He opens it, a little like ribbon and stuff. He looks at the first, there's like a protective sheet, picks up, looks at the first painting. He's like, oh my. And she's like, you'll find the whole Kier cycle. So the first was a black guy with a really big mustache. And it's like bigger than Milchick. So at first I was like, is this supposed to be Milchick? And it kind of is, but it's not. And then the second has like someone in this old-timey like hospital bed who is black. And the third has this man, it's supposed to be Kier looking over a valley, but he's black too. So basically, recreate, because they want him to see Kier himself or something like that. So they kind of like redid all these pictures to look like Milchick. And then the board speaks to Natalie, and she's like, the board wishes to express that I, Natalie, received the same gift upon receipt of my current position and found it extremely moving. Milchick's like, I'm grateful. And she's like, yes. And he's like, it's meaningful to see myself reflected in, and then she's like, the board has concluded the call. So you just like cut them off. They're just like, they don't care. So then they stand kind of like staring at each other. Milchick's like just all serious. Natalie has this, like that huge forced grin. And she finally says, congratulations, Seth. And she leaves. Cobell is still driving down the snowy, barren, like 2-lane road. There's a sign, Salt's Neck, 238 miles. So she stops, she sighs, stares for a bit. She looks at the passenger seat where there's like a breathing tube that's all wound up. And I guess that's the thing, is like, did she lose a baby? Like, I don't know what the deal is with all that stuff that she had. Then she puts the car into gear and she does this U-turn. So she's going back. Mark and Hallie walk down this dark hall, and it's like the lights only turn on like the one immediate section they're in. And as soon as they step, it like turns off behind them. And then they think that they're at the goat room. So she Hallie knocks, opens it, and there's like, a little fence along the side. There's like hay, and there's like this little just white barn. But there's like this long corridor with like, kind of the plastic sheets or like whatever over the door. So Mark gets on his knees and he pushes aside the plastic strips, and Hallie's like, are you going to go through? But so the hall is kind of dirty, and there's like stray pieces of hay and stuff like that. And she's like, are you sure? And he goes through, he starts crawling, and he just barely fits like crawling size. But it's weird because he looks like a giant. It looks like it's like identical to the regular halls, only it's smaller, whatever, half the size or maybe less. So then she's like, all right, okay, we're doing this. And she's like, can you see anything? He's like, no. He's like, careful, there's poop. There's poop in the hallway. And there's like, hey. Then there's like this kind of like big doggy door at the end, so that they go through, and they're like mesmerized. Because there's this room. It's like maybe like the size of their work area, maybe a little bigger. But there's like kind of this green, grassy like hills, and there's lots of cute little goats just wandering around. There's this dude, I don't think they see him. He's kind of like maybe on the other side of the hill. He's dressed in like a black goat outfit with like these big long horns. It's kind of freaky. This lady like walks up to them, with like one arm up, and she's like kind of clicking something, and her arms and legs are covered with like white. I was like, are those? She's got like big gloves or something like that. Yeah, because at first I was like, are those casts? It's like, wait, what is she wearing? She's like, are you here to kill me? And Mark Stammers, he's like, no. He's like, sorry, hi, I'm Mark. And she's like, I'm Helly. And Mark's like, and we're from Macro Data Refinement. So the lady doesn't respond. It's Gwendolyn Christie. So it's like, whoa, okay. And she still has like an arm up. So then Mark's like, oh, what is this place? And she's like, Mammalians Nurturable. And it's like, I don't know. I thought maybe she had this big syringe. I don't know. So then she like kind of turns and walks. So they go after her. And Mark's like, please, we mean you no harm. We just want to talk, please. Then she turns. Irving's walking. He's got the missing sign. He gets to like the art place, whatever, and it seems like it's empty. There's some paintings out. All the drawers are there, or whatever. So he walks in. He looks at what's like sitting out there, like what's on display. Then Felicia, the lady who worked with Bert, she's like steps out from the back. She's surprised to see him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry to pop in after all this time. I'm sure you must be very busy." And she's like, "It's good to see you." And he smiles, and she walks up, gives him a hug, and Irv kind of takes like a deep breath. At her desk, Mark shows the lady, the goat lady, the missing drawing. He's like, "Her name's Miss Casey. She's our former wellness director." And she's like, "Wellness? We don't abide such fripperies here." And I was like, wait, what's that? I had to look it up. It means showy or unnecessary ornament. And Hallie's like, right, well, she's been retired, but we believe she may still be on the floor. And Mark's like, are you sure you don't know her? And she turns and looks at Mark. Maybe you should take that page of paper and be on your way. Mark's like, not until you've answered my question. And the lady just like stares like at him. And she's looking at him like the kind of deranged way. And Hallie's like, Mark? So the lady suddenly stands up. She grabs a bell on her desk and starts like clanging it. Several other like come out, like some from like over the hills, some from like the back rooms. That goat guy's there. There's this guy with like a big pitchfork, like all these people there. And she puts the bell down. And then she's like, you should have left. So it's like, are they going to kill him? Miss Huang, was it Huang? Yeah, I think Miss Huang. She takes Dylan somewhere. He's like, it'd be cool if I knew what this was about. So, like, is it rude to keep asking why you're a kid? He's like, I don't mean to impugn. It's just like, are you okay, They're not, like, forcing you to be here, are they? He's like, fudge. And he's like, why are we going to the security room? But she doesn't say a word. Puts her, like, ID in a card slot, opens the door, stands aside to let him enter. Then there's, like, sounds like waves crashing and seagulls, and there's a bunch of screens with Dylan and his wife. And he's like, wow. Then behind him must be like the visitation suite. So his wife stands there. She calls out. She's like, hi. Then Miss Huang's like, Dylan G, through good behavior and output, you've earned an 18-minute visitation event with your Audi's wife, Gretchen G. Your time begins now. And she closes the door. And they just like kind of stare at each other. So then she's like, should we sit? And he's like, nice sack. And she's like, pardon? And he points to her purse. It's like a clear purse. She says that they made her put her stuff in there. And he's like, badass. And she's like, you really don't know me at all? He's like, no, well, I mean from the photos from just now, but... And she's like, yeah, Seth warned me that this might be weird. And Dylan's like, who's Seth? And she's like, don't you... And then on the intercom, Miss Huang's like, please refrain from sharing information that may be privileged or sensitive. Thank you. So they don't know what Mr. Milchick's first name is. So she's like, okay. And then she whispers, she's like, who is that child? And then she's like, Miss Huang. So she can hear them. And she's like, Dylan's like, look, it's really nice to meet you, but am I in trouble? And she's like, oh, no. It's like, you're not in trouble. And she's like, we have 3 kids. And he's like, right. And she's like, and you, no, he or my husband has trouble keeping other jobs. And Dylan's like, he dumb? And she's like, no. He a dick? No. What is wrong with him? And she's like, oh, nothing's wrong with him. He never quite found his thing. And Dylan's like, so he's actually kind of a fudge up. And she's like, she sighs. She's like, do you want to see a picture of the kids? He's like, yeah. So she takes a photo out. She's like, Jim is 6. He's in first grade now. And they're dressed like old frontier outfits. I feel like we saw this picture before. I don't remember. She's like, Ruth is 4 and Merrick just turned 2. He's like, wow, holy poop, look at them. They're awesome. She's like, they are. He's like, and we live on a cattle ranch. And she like kind of slowly smiles because they went to obviously some theme park or something like that. And he's wondering what. Irv and Felicia are like laughing. She's telling stories about Bert and Irv. He's just loving it. And he's like, he was fearless. And she says she worked with him for like 6 years. She only saw him scared of one thing. She's like, he spent 2 hours on his hair the first time he went to visit you. And Irv's like, really? He's like, I should show you something. So he drew a sketch of Bert like in this little notebook. And she's like, oh, it's lovely. And Irv's like, I draw one every day. I couldn't see him. It's like, my numbers went down, but I didn't even care. And then she sees, she's flipping through the sketches. She sees a sketch towards the back of the long, dark corridor with a red light above the door. And Irv's like, oh, no, that's not Bert. That's something else. That's nothing. And she's like, how do you know about the experts hall? And he's like, I'm sorry? And she's like, we send a lot of shipments there. Used to go ourselves, but now they send a guy. Irving's like, do you remember where it is? And she just like looks at him. With the goat people, there's like scary looking, like semi-disheveled people just like staring, like surround Mark and Helly. They're both like, hello, hi. And the main lady is like strongly discussing something with this dude, but we can't hear her. Then Helly decides to move. She shows one of them the missing drawing, and she asks if they've seen this woman. Then the main lady's like, hey, stop that. And she comes back towards him. Helly continues like, her name's Miss Casey. She was a wellness director. The goat lady's like, stop that. And Helly's like, have any of you seen her? And she's like, enough. We've decided to send courier to inform Mr. Milchick of your inquiry. And Mark's like, no, you can't do that. It's like, they could kill her if they find out. And she's like, that's not a mammalian's problem. And Mark's like, it's an any problem. It's like, listen, we used to be afraid of other departments too. And she's like, we are not afraid of you. So Mark tries like talking to the others, they just look like zombies. He's like, look, they just disappeared her. And Helly holds the drawing like over her head. He's like, and if we let this happen to Miss Casey, then who's going to step up when it happens to us? If one of your goats went missing, wouldn't you go looking for it? The lady like looks at them and looks at the black furred goat man dude, looks at the dude that she was talking to, and in a lower voice she's like, she used to come and do our sessions in our husbandry tanks. She had a gentle way about her. And the goat dude's like, she said my Audi excels at stargazing. It meant a great deal to me. And she's like, as far as we know, she was retired, just like they say. But if you suspect otherwise, we won't hinder your search. Mark's like, thank you. And she's like, and Helly's like, yes, thank you. So then the guy she was talking to like clears his throat, and the main lady looks at him and is like, but before you go, we would like to see your bellies. And Helly's like, our bellies? She looks at Mark and he gives her a tiny shrug, and she's like, okay. So they both like pull up their shirts a bit. People like look, crane their heads or whatever. And the main lady says to the little guy, see, pouchless. And the dude like pauses and finally it's like, proves nothing. And Mark's like, okay, let's. And Helly's like, so we'll just, yeah. And Mark's like, yeah. And then the crowd disperses. Miss Huang opens the door. Dylan and Dylan's Audi's wife both like stand. He hands her back the photo. He's like, I'm glad we did this. I mean, I hope for you this was, I don't know. She's like, yeah, it was. And then Dylan's like, and I'll be good. I'm going to make you all proud. And she's like, I'm always proud of you, Dylan. He's like, cool. So then he kind of moves, like hold out his hand or whatever to like shake her, but she hugs him. And she's like, I love you. And he's like, oh. And she's like, sorry, have it. So it's a little awkward goodbye. She goes out the door. Miss Huang follows and closes the door. Dylan, he's like left in the room alone. It's like, now what? It's night at Dylan's house. Kids are like watching his cartoon. Dylan's on the couch. His wife's getting ready to go somewhere. So the kids are watching a cartoon. Dylan's on the couch. I think he's like reading a magazine. His wife's like getting ready to go somewhere. I don't know if she's going to work or something. And, she gives him instruction on, whatever's cooking. I think cookies. She's like, you just slice them and whatever, stick them in the oven. Before she leaves, he's like, hey, how was the thing? The thing with me? And she's like, oh, it was good. He's like, yeah? She's like, weird, good, but good. He's like, cool. And she says to the kids, and she's like, yeah, okay, I'll see you in the morning. And they all say bye. So that was like kind of weird. There's this woman, she reads, she's like, but surely it was like something, and juleps can't fill the void left by love. Indeed, only, I think was it beer? Only wine can achieve this, but it's famously costly, which is why sadness is among the most recurrent issues facing the poor. And she's like, remarkable. So it's it's Natalie. She's reading Rickon's book to him. And she's like, it's remarkable, so astute. And he's like, is it? He's like, that's what I was going for. And then Devin walks in and he's like, hey, my babe. She's like, this is Natalie Karen from Lumen. And Devin's like, is everything okay? He's like, yes, God, yes. Natalie just stopped by to discuss my book, actually. And she's like, oh. And she's got a big smile like on her face. It's a joy to meet you, Devin. You must be so proud. And she's like, I am. And she's like, I'm sure you know by now that your husband's work has found its way onto our severed floor. And she's like, yeah, do we know how that happened yet? And Rickon's like, so we've actually moved beyond that. And we are now discussing what was the term you used? And she's like, the result. And he's like, the result. And Natalie's like, Rickon's work has had a profound effect upon our workers. We think he's really tapped into something. But it's like, not really. I mean, they were reading it, but probably because it was forbidden. They knew it was forbidden. Rickon's like, and Natalie wants to discuss a version of the you are, specifically for innies. And Devin's like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. I mean, but what's wrong with the current version? And Natalie's like, nothing. And Rickon's like, no, the explanation is actually very interesting. And he's like kind of stammering and she's just smiling. He's like, it's fascinating, actually. It's like, you, please, because he wants Natalie to say it. She's like, there's a certain verbiage to which innies respond more favorably. If we just tweak it here and there, and Rickon's like, they think it could be a real game changer. And Devin's like, gotcha. And she's like, I gotta go, but she needs a bottle an hour. So he's like, of course. And she turns to leave. And then Natalie's like, Devin? And she's like, yes. She's like, can I just say, your brother is one of the sweetest members of our Sever team. And she's like, yeah, he's a good egg. Okay, 1 hour. And she's like, doesn't want to have anything to do with her. So Mark and Devin they're like cutting fabric. I was like, wait, what are you doing? At first I was like, are they cutting tags off clothes or whatever? But there's like also like glue and stuff. And so Mark's like, so she said her name's Natalie? And Devin's like, Natalie Karen, I think. And he's like, what was she asking? Like, what I'm up to her? And she's like, nope, because it's actually Rickon they're after. And he's like, Rickon? And she's like, yep, his book. And Mark's like, what? So it's not Dylan, it's Mark. And she's like, I guess you and your work friends were inspired by it. He's like, oh, Jesus. And she's like, yep. It's like, they want to do like any specific cut. And he's like, wow, okay, well, there's a lot I'm not going to say. And she's like, and that is so appreciated. So I think she must realize that Rickon is a piece of work. So Mark's like, have you told Rickon what we're doing here? And she's like, are you insane? No. He's like, okay, good. And she's like, okay, so you need to see the after image for like 2.5 minutes. He's like 2 minutes, 18 seconds. It's from the parking spot to the elevator, give or take. And he turns like this light or thing on, and written on it is like, who is alive? And Devin's like, yeah, I think the Whole Mind Collective would be very proud of this, as well as your kindergarten teacher. What the fudge was her name? Mrs. Lustgarten? And he's like, yeah, Mrs. Lustgarten, yeah. And she's like, wow. And Mark's like, she really got me. Then Devin says that she has to go. Will he be careful, please? And, she says she loves him, even though he left her with a check at Pip's at the diner. But she asked him if he wanted to get diner food. Milchek is working on a computer in his office. He gets ready to leave. He puts on a leather coat. He looks at the new art like pieces on his desk. Then he puts them back in the box, and he puts the box like high up in the storage closet. So it's kind of like he doesn't want anything to do with them. And I think they talk about, I think it was in the after the episode, there's like a special where something how like, how Milchek like is proud and doesn't, how he sees himself or something. I don't know. So it's still night. Mark drives somewhere, like it's like this old, it's not quite a barn, but like this big building, like one-story building or structure. And it's like, it seems like it's in the middle of nowhere. He puts a blanket over his head and he turns the light on that they worked on, like under the blanket. And you see that who is alive, appears on the light. He turns it off and he starts counting. And he gets to 12 and he curses. So then he tries again. Helena, not Helly, but Helena, has a car waiting for her outside Lumen. I think it was like a Lincoln Continental or whatever. But before she can get in, she notices Cobell is parked nearby, standing outside her car. So Helena walks up to her, and she's like, "If you want me back, you must accommodate my needs." And Helena's like, "I'm listening." Cobell's like, "MDR, non-negotiable. Mark S. is so close to completing Cold Harbor. I intend to finish the work that I started, which is why Milchek must go. He is not equipped for the task. I must be floor manager." And Helena's like, "I hear ego, hubris, arrogance. Kier teaches us they only cause pain. Everything I accomplished, I earned through dedication and industry, not because I was born into it." And Helena's like, "I think you've overestimated your contributions and underestimated your blessings. We didn't have to ask you back. You didn't have a choice." And Helena's like, "Are you sure? Why don't we reset? It doesn't have to be this way." And she picks up her cell phone. "Natalie, please see if the board is available for Miss Cobell and myself." And she puts the phone down. "Let's go speak to them together." So they start walking towards the building. Cobell slowly follows. When Helena reaches like the curb by a car, Cobell like stops in her tracks. And then she starts to turn. And Helena's like, "Harmony?" But Cobell just like walks back to her car, gets in, leaves. So not sure. At first it's like, is it the driver dude? Is she intimidated? Why doesn't she want to talk to the board? Mark is still in his car. He's still counting. He gets like 36 and he cracks open his eyes just for a second. And there's like an image of a lady that startles him. He's like, "Jesus!" There's a lady standing outside at the front of his car. And she's like, "Are you trying to burn a message to your innie and your retinas because your computer told you that was a brilliant idea?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she moves towards the passenger seat. He's like, No. He's like, "What? No. And she like knocks on the locked door. He's like, "What are you, what?" She's like, "It doesn't work." He's like, "No poop." And she's like, "The switch briefly dilates the pupils. Clean slate." He's like, "Okay, thank you. Thanks." He's like trying to get her to leave. And she's like, "Also, you could blind yourself. And how is the innie going to send you a message back?" And he's like, "That's his problem? I don't know." So she keeps like trying to door. And she's like, "Come on, Mark, unlock the door." He's like, "Why?" She's like, "We need to talk." He's like, "Oh my God." She's like, Mark, unlock this fudging door." So he opens it. He's like, "What?" She's like, "There's an easier way." He's like, "Didn't seem particularly easy for Petey." And she's like, "Heard about the OTC?" And he's like, "Yeah, my sister talked to my innie. He said a lot of things." And she's like, "Did he tell her your wife is alive at Lumen?" And he's like, "Who told you that? Is she? Is Gemma alive?" And this lady's like, "She was the last time I saw her." And Mark gets out of the car, tries to like catch his breath. And she gets out, he can like barely stand. And he's like, "How could you not tell me?" And she's like, "We were interrupted, if you recall, Mark. I want to help you, but you have to trust me." He's like, "How the fuck?" And she's like, "There's one way and one way only to get information in and out of Lumen, and that's reintegration." She's like, "I'm better at it now. I can make it work with you. I can sew together a version of you that loves her with a version of you that can. He's like, yes, do it. And she's like, you sure? He's like, I want to see my wife. So Mark sits, he's in, at first I was like, he's in some room, but I think it's his basement. So the lady, her name is Asal. I think we've seen her before in the first season. So she's setting up like some machines and stuff. There's like a bunch of wires, like, kind of attached to his head or taped to his head. The monitors like differentiate like the 5 brain wave frequencies of the innie and outie, delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. 1 frequency, 2 waves per oscilloscope. The waves aren't in sync, not yet, anyways, and that's what they're going to do. So she has him lean forward, so his back is not in water, So she has him like lean forward, and he's like, "Is it going to hurt?" And she's like, "Ideally, not." What does your mouth taste like? He's like, "Nothing," and she's like, "Good." Then he notices his hand starts to shake, and he's like, "WTF?" And she's like, "Shh." She like turns a knob on one of the computers, whatever. And she's like, "Are you all right?" He's like, "I don't know. Am I?" And she's like, "I'm going to start with some easy questions to get, and get more complex. Do you remember protocol?" And he's like, "Is that the first question?" And she's like, "No, we haven't started yet." He's like, "Yes, I remember." And she's like, "Relax your body. You should feel good when this is over." She's like, "Who am I?" He's like, "Okay, so we've started. Who am I?" He's like, "Asal Regabi." "Where are we?" "My basement." "What was your mother's name?" "Fern Scout." "What was her eye color?" He's like, and she's like, "Seriously?" He's like, "Brown. It was brown." And Asal's like, "Did you love her?" He's like, "Yeah." "Name a dam." "Hoover." She starts like turning a dial. "What does MDR stand for?" He's like, "What?" "MDR." He's like, "Mystic." And she's like, "That's wrong. What is something for which you feel shame?" He's like, "Shame? My dog died when I was a kid. It was my fault." And she's like, "Why?" "I left the gate open." She's like, "Where were you born?" And there's like a quick flash, like kind of going back and like kind of pausing. It looks like, he's lying back on a conference table, like with the same wires and headpiece like on his face. He's like, I'm not sure. "What month is it?" He's like, "You mean what quarter?" And there's like another flash. He's like, "Wait." And she's like, "What is your first memory?" He's like, "I don't remember." And she's like, "Tell me." And there's like a flash. "Tell me your first memory." "I don't remember." And then the waves on the screen, like the brain waves start to like merge together. So then he's back on the conference table, and Petey's voice is like, "Hey there, you on a table. I wonder if you'd mind taking a brief survey." So Mark sits up. There's like some flashes like between the outfit, like he's wearing a suit. He's wearing what he's wearing, just now. "5 questions. To start out, who are you?" And there's like more flashes. That's the end of the 3rd episode. So, I mean, this did not go well for Petey when he did reintegration, and Mark's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So that's just kind of crazy. Oh man, I like, as I said, I love the show. Okay, then Prime Target, season 1, episode 3, The Sequence. So I'm enjoying this show. I think just the whole idea of this pattern in math that doesn't exist, but if it does exist, how it could change everything and what this means, and so we're getting more information. So like, pieces are falling together. It starts off 1994, Cambridge, England. It's like some dance club, but we see like someone doing some math calculations while other people are dancing. So it's like, obviously this must be Safia, right? And then this guy and this short-haired girl start like making out. They go back to her place. So she warns him of her flatmate. So the lady wasn't at the club doing the math stuff. But so this lady with short hair, she warns this dude that she just picked up about her flatmate. She's like, she's sort of brilliant. And the dude, when they go in, he tries saying hi to her because she's working like at a desk, but she doesn't even look up. She just puts her hand up to like wave. And he's, so the short-haired girl, she's like getting like something to drink in the kitchen. And the guy's like, "Do you usually work until 3 a.m? And Safia, this is obviously it's Safia, she's like, "Different biorhythms." He's like, "You what?" And she's like, "I've changed my internal clock. I'm doing 21-hour days." And the guy's like, "So I don't get it. She's like, term is 8 weeks, 56 days. It's not enough time for me to finish my thesis. But if I make each day last 21 hours, then I get a whole extra week. And he's like, right. And she's like, means I end up eating breakfast when you're about to go to sleep. So the other girl says, she's like, I tried to warn you. And he's like, yeah, good luck with whatever you're writing. And she's like, proof of my theorem. And the other girl's like, says, good night, Safia. Her name's like Sophie. And then Safia goes back to working. In Cassis, France, so this is like now, Taylor, she walks into the city. She's got like a hoodie on, and she makes it back to the house. She starts packing up her stuff. She hears like someone upstairs, so she goes to this other bigger house. It's that stupid rich kid, whatever, that keeps like trying to hit on her or whatever. He opens the door. She like walks in without being asked. She's like, "Are you alone?" He's like, "Uh-huh." He's like, "My parents are away." And he's like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Listen, I'm going to need you to run to the store for me, okay?" And he's like, "You don't want to go home?" She's like, "I can't." He's like, "All right, like write me a list and I'll go." So like, that at least there's that. He does this without asking why or anything, and maybe because he's trying to get something in return, I don't know, or maybe he's just really is a nice guy. Edward's like looking over papers. He says to himself, he's like, "It's BS." He's like, "You're better than that, Safia." And he goes out. He's like, waiting in the hall. There's a guy out there. He's like, "Hey, it's Stephen from the Institute." So he's the one that like talked to Edward and slipped his card on the door. Edward just like walks past him, and the guy's like, just hear me out." He's like, "Will you? You're a number theorist, right? It's an important area for us. Cryptography, genus theory." He's like, "Look, what happened to Robert Melinder? It was a tragedy." And Edward stops and turns around. And he's like, "It was. And with Ray Osborne's illness now progressing," and Edward's like, "You know Osborne?" So that's the other professor with Alzheimer's. And the guy's like, "Edward, we're a research institute in Cambridge. We know all the stars, past, present, future. You're going to need someone new to guide you. We were rather hoping it might be us." And he gives him like this, at first I thought it was like a big pamphlet. He's like, "You won't find a more substantial endowment on either side of the Atlantic. The Kaplan Institute, privately funded, fostering talent. Leave the world a better place than we found it, eh?" It's like, "You can stay in Cambridge, finish your opus, whatever that may be." Like the pamphlet is actually a contract, and he points to like the summary part where it mentions the annual salary of £80,000, which is $99,733. So $99,000 for a year. And he's like, "We'll look after you. Take all the time you need. You got my card." And he walks away. Edward doesn't say a word. So back in 1994, Safia is just lying back in her bed. Her flatmate Sophie is trying to get her to go somewhere. She's like, "Saf, you've been working on that ridiculous schedule of yours for months now. Come on, the work is over. We are celebrating. Where is Mr. Melinder?" And Sophie's like, "Robert has gone." And Sophie's like, "What do you mean gone?" Sophie's like, "Gone as in left me, gone as in it's over between us." Sophie's like, "Bastard, are you okay?" And Sophie's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Is this it?" And she's looking at like her folder. She's like, "Mm-hmm." It's like, "My finished thesis." So Sophie opens the folder. She's like, "Is there any point in me trying to read this?" And Sophie laughs. She's like, "No." So then Sophie's like, "What happened?" And Sophie's like, "He didn't like my work." And she's like, "Eh?" And she's like, "No, seriously, that's why. He thinks I should just stop all of this primes nonsense. And he said that I shouldn't show it to anyone, let alone publish it." And Sophie's like, "Why? Why would he do that? He loves you." So Sophie's like, "He wanted me to abandon it, but he knows I would never do that." So Taylor's like sits in the shower. Later, the dorky dude returns some stuff. She thanks him. Then I'm assuming it's like a burner phone. She calls Alex, the other guy, the new guy that was working with him, and he's like, asks, "Where is she?" And Taylor's like, "Just listen to me. The unit's been corrupted. Someone killed Olsen, and they tried to kill me too, okay? It's got to be something that we've seen." And the guy's like, "Wait, Taylor." But she just continued, "Someone is wiping out our unit, and I need you to give me access to the files as soon as possible. I need to know what's going on. Someone hacked our communications." He's like, "Taylor, someone's been listening to us." He's like, "Hold on, someone's at the door." And she's like, "No, dude, Alex, dude, don't answer it. Just go around the back." And you hear, "Hello, yeah, who are you guys?" And she hears a struggle, grunting, and gunfire. She hangs up, takes the SIM card out, and like tosses it in the water. So dorky dude made some food. She says thanks, but she doesn't want to put him out. He's like, "I like you, Taylor. I think you know that. And she's like, yeah, I picked up on it. He's like, you want to tell me what happened? And she's like, maybe over a drink? He's like, yeah, okay. Wine? So he goes to the wine cellar to get it, and she takes off. But I guess she took the keys to one of his sports cars too, or something like that, because she drives off in this blue car. Edward's biking to Professor Osborne. He wrote a bunch of stuff on a chalkboard. He's like, how can someone like Safia Zamil make such obvious errors? And the professor's like eating. He's kind of in a daze because he's not really hearing Edward. And Edward's like, Safia Zamil, do you remember? You gave me permission to look at her old papers, her rough work, in case it would help me retrace my own workings. The powers of 3 are never even. Multiply an odd number by itself, and the answer is always odd, of course. And he turns back to the board. Professor finally says something. Why has she put the answers 2? And Edward's like, well, exactly. And she's done it again here. Look, 2n squared minus 1 is square n equals 6. She's crossed out all the right answers and altered it. It's like she deliberately wanted it to be wrong. It happens again and again and again. I made a list of all her mistakes. And you see like 2, 6, 1, 1, 9, 1, 2, 2, 5, 3, 3. So I'm looking at it, like, is this a sequence? Whatever. And the professor is like, asked that. And Edward's like, I think so, but I can't find it. I thought about it. I was trying to think. I couldn't find anything either because I'm not a super duper math genius. Then the professor's like, well, we'll just have to ask her. And Edward doesn't say anything because the professor thinks she's still alive. And she's like, what is it, Ed? And he's like, Safia's dead, Professor. A long time ago now. She took her own life. And the professor's like, no. But that's awful, awful. Why? Why, Edward? So, 1994, Safia's working on papers, crossing numbers out and writing down the wrong ones, I guess. Sophie's in the other room, and she's like, this is a solicitor's letter. Sounds very threatening. What do they want from you? And Safia's like, what do you think? They want my thesis. They're not going to have it. And to herself, she's like, put it there or there. Yeah, 2. And then Sophie sees like the smoke detector on a shelf and asks, has it been acting up? She's like, why have you ripped the cover off? So she must have figured out about the cameras. Safia gets up, goes in the kitchen, makes some tea. Sophie picks up her thesis, and Sophie sees her with it, runs back and grabs it. She's like, give me that. And they kind of like stare at each other, and Sophie's like, what's wrong? Sophie's like, she just leaves the room. She goes to her room, she shuts the door. At the pub, Edward is like looking at her notes. He's like, what are you trying to say, Safia? You're just writing poop. The bartender dude comes up, he's not working. And he's like, talking to yourself again. And he's like, my round? And Edward's like, do you know, I think I'd rather just get out of here. So then they're lying in bed together. And Edward's like, I need to tell my dad about college. And the other dude, I don't even know his name. He's like, hey, if you take this money from the institute, you can just tell him that instead. It's like, yeah, I got kicked out of the university, but it's okay because someone else wants to make me rich. And Edward's like, yeah, he wouldn't care. And the guy's like, what? Don't your parents want you to do well? Edward's like, my mom did, but he just always wanted me to be more like him. We don't really communicate or connect. He's not a bad guy. We don't intersect. And then the guy's like, what about your mom? And Edward's like, she died when I was 16. He's like, Jesus, Ed, I'm so sorry. And Edward's like, the universe is cruel. Dad's got 2 boys now, decent kids. Maybe he just tried harder the second time. He gets up and he's like, they're watching me, following me. And the guy's like, who? He's like, I keep forgetting if it's Kaplan or Kaplan. I think it's Kaplan. He's like, the people whose money you think I should take. Then it cuts to Baghdad, Iraq. It's like I almost forgot about this subplot. So Andrea's friend, Sharon, and he has arrived. Her associate that she mentioned, Akram Nizar, he greets him. So he says that he's from the Baghdad Department of Culture and Antiquities. And he says it's a tragedy what happened to Andrea with her husband. This structural engineer, Hassan, he introduced himself. They have a security team that guides them away, and these security guys seem a little sketch. They're very angry, like scowling. So they go down some stairs. Sharon's like, it's magnificent. So he wants to tell Andrea. He's like, oh, it's incredible. Andrea, she walks in the room, kind of like a big fancy candlelit dinner. I think it's the students are there. And then Stephen Ray, professor character, he like motions her to come sit by him. And she says that she's not sure, but the madness of the act itself aside, she's like, there's not a moment since he died that I don't feel that he was a mystery. I mean, you weren't worried about him, were you? And Stephen Ray's like, being a master of college, everyone assumes you're some sort of guru. I'm as confused as everybody. It's like, sometimes there are no answers. The dean was thinking of having a little college memorial service, not a wake, of course, a celebration. Andrew's like, well, it will have to wait until I'm back from Baghdad. And he just kind of like looks at her. She's like, I love my work, James, and this might actually be the house of wisdom. If I don't go see it for myself, I will end up a very bitter woman, and none of us want that, do we? And he's like, no, of course not. You know how much I admire your work. You must go. Edward rides his bike down this like dark, narrow street, and then there's like this other guy riding on a bike behind him, and then they turn the corner. Then there's two guys. They start like kind of speeding up. They knock him down. One's like, grab the bag. He tries like fighting, but then I think one, I couldn't tell if he like just hit him or kicked him or something like that. So Edward's like, oh, he tries getting up. They take off. He just rides in the opposite direction. But then there's like some lady like walking after him. So it's like, who could that be? Sharon looks at a computer rendering of the place and the explosion. He tells one guy it's almost like an act of God. He's like, if the explosion had been just like a few inches off, the whole structure could have come down. The security guy's like, maybe it's almost untouched. It's remarkable. The other Akram guy, he I think it was him. He puts on like a handkerchief with writing and an address, and he kind of discreetly, he's like, perhaps it wanted to be found. So on the handkerchief says 616 Al Tharir 2100. So it's like an address and a time. And because the security guy seems like very watchful, like they're very just whatever. So later, at just like going through the street markets and stuff like that, Sharon goes down this dark road. There's these three punks that give him a hard time, and I don't know if it's like an underground gay club because the kids are like, oh, do you want to kiss? And they kind of like laugh or something like that. So he goes inside because it just looks like it's just guys in there dancing. So Sharon finds the other guy. The guy's like, it was brave of you to come, and Sharon's like, it was brave of you to ask. So I don't know if Sharon is gay and he thinks that he's hitting on him, or I don't know what's going on because the show's very pro everything. But Akram, I think it was Akram or whatever. He's like, something dangerous is happening. I need to show you something. I don't know who to trust with this, but something is going on at the site. So then we see Edward's doing some calculations in a pub, and this lady's like, if you're not going to, it's like a waitress, she's like, if you're not going to drink, can you go and not drink somewhere else? He's like, well, I'll have another one. And he, leaves his work he's writing like on a menu or something, whatever. He gets up, goes to the bar, gets, a beer. When he turns around, Taylor's sitting at his table looking at his work. And she's like, what have you tried? Differences, ratios? He like yanks it out of her hand. And she's like, it's okay, got it all right here. And she like slides her phone on the table. So she, took a picture of it. He's like, you should delete that. And she's like, I may. She's like, what's the work, Ed? He's like, don't call me Ed, but how do you know my name? And she's like, so what those guys take off you? It wasn't money, was it? It wasn't your phone. It's like, I need to know what work you're doing because that's what they wanted. And that's what they took from you. He's like, it wasn't my work they took. And she looks a little confused, like, like, what do you mean? And he thinks about telling her, but then he's like, who are you? And she's like, the same people came after you, came after me. They tried to kill me. So they're not playing around. And until I work out what's going on, you're all I've got. It's like, hey, I want to help you. He's like, I don't need help. She's like, yes, you do. Trust me, you do. It's like, now, what is this? Whatever it is, it's valuable to someone. He's like, it's from a student. And Taylor's like, great. Do they have a name? And Edward's like, they're dead. And she's like, oh, well, you sure it's math? And he's like, it's a sequence of numbers. Of course it's maths. And I always find, I don't know, when people just like say maths, like plural, I find that interesting because it should be. And she's like, well, can a number just be a number? He gives her like this like WTF you talking about look. And she's like, look, I don't know, like a menu in a Chinese restaurant. And he's like, it's 11 digits long. And she's like, well, it could be a long menu. He like shakes his head. Then he whispers to himself, a menu. He's like, thanks. He gets up. She's like, I'm coming with you. So in 1994, Safia is writing at the desk. She looks upset. She picks up her work and she leaves the apartment. In the present, Edward and Taylor go to the library using Melinda's badge. He enters like some numbers that he's been writing. He looks at in the archives. The number or the serial number gives a result of his nonfiction book, Sophie Germain, The Unsolved Riddle. It's like one woman's quest to crack an ancient enigma. So he's like, there's our sequence. So he gets up. Taylor types something. I think she went to clear to search or something like that, because that would be smart in case anyone else looked at the computer. 1994, Safia puts a book away on the shelf, and then in the present, kind of like same like area, Edward and Taylor like walk up to that same shelf. Taylor finds a book because they kind of split up a little bit looking for it. She pulls out. She's like, got it. Back in Baghdad, Sharon is like sitting. This guy comes up to him and asks if everything's all right. He's like, no, actually. He's like, I'm concerned about the stability of the site. And the dude's like, the department has signed off on it. And Sharon's like, sure, but where is the structural engineer? There's meant to be someone here at all times. So, and then the guy's like, I heard there was some disagreement about the source of the explosion. And then this other security guy hears, he's like, okay, doctor. It's like, you listen to me carefully. If our assurances mean nothing to you, then perhaps you need to leave. So Sharon kind of like scoffs. And he's like, then I'll follow up on this myself. So he goes out, he goes to this apartment, rings a buzzer. And this guy leans over in the balcony on the third floor. And Sharon's like, says he's looking for Hassan Qasim. He says they're working together. And then there's this guy sitting at a table, like drinking tea, who's like suddenly looks up at them. So he's like, everyone seems suspicious. Sharon says the office gave him this address, and the guy he's like, what do you want? And he's like, I was hoping to speak to him. He didn't come to work yesterday. And he's like, he hasn't been here. He's like, I don't know where he is. And then Sharon's like, when he comes home, could you ask him? And the guy like leaves the balcony, goes back inside. So he leaves, and the guy drinking the tea like watches him, and Sharon actually turns back and like looks at him, but they didn't make eye contact. The guy didn't see him turn around, but he keeps walking. So it's like he knew that guy was suspicious. I don't even know what's going on. Edward tells Taylor that there's nothing there, no notes, no clues, nothing, and she's like, let me see. And she tries grabbing the book, and he blocks her. He's like, not until you tell me what you do. So she's like, NSA, and he just like shakes his head, like, huh? She's like, U.S. National Security Agency, surveillance. And he's like, BS. And she's like, wait, so where have you looked? He's like, everywhere, the whole thing. So she looks through, looks under the plastic cover. She finds some folded sheets. And then he's like, that's her handwriting. And she's like, whose? And he's like, Sophia Zamil, the girl whose work those guys stole. So Taylor unfolds and reads, proof is the idol before whom we all kneel. And we see a flashback of Safia writing while Taylor's reading it. So proof is everything in life. Proof that we are loved. And it changes to like Safia reading as she's writing whatever. So it's like kind of goes back and forth. That, we're desired, needed. So here's mine. Proof of what is happening to me. And then like an alarm goes off. And Taylor's like, is that a test? And Edward's like, I don't think so. So, they have to clear out of the library. And she's like, but how often does that happen? He's like, never. Why? And Taylor's like, never is not good. So they start going down some stairs, see the kind of two goons talking to the faculty guy. And she tells Edward, like, turn, they have to go back up. The two dudes like start after him. And the facility guy's like, sirs, wait. So they go back into the library room where they were. They go up like to the next level. There's like these little stairs with more shelves. She tells Edward that they should split up because they only care about him. So she'll circle back. He like ducks behind some shelves and they go like past him. He can see a guy like walking above him because there's like kind of like iron gate floors. He kind of like backs up like quietly and everything. I'm like, he's going to knock something over, right? But no, the other guy somehow turned back. He's there, grabs him from behind, turns him around, grabs Edward's throat, like hits him. Taylor comes back, punches the guy in the face, knees him. He goes down, and she like knees him again, hits him again. They start running. So she busts open an emergency exit. They're outside. They go down some stairs. They go into this like church, and there's like a choir singing like that. And she's like, okay, what's the work, Ed? Your work that Robert Melinder destroyed. What is it? And he's like, you know about that? And she's like, yes, I was watching. That was my job at the NSA, to watch him. And Edward's like, why? She's like, we watched lots of mathematicians. He was just one of them, Ed. She's like, I think Robert's suicide was faked. I think he was murdered. When I reported to my boss, he was killed. And I just barely escaped. So I'm going to ask you again, what's the work? She's like, look, Ed, I'm the person that you tell, okay? Help me figure this out. So Edward's like, number patterns, prime numbers. And she's like, patterns and primes? That's what work you're looking for? He's like, yeah, my work is abstract. It's pure mathematics. She's like, yeah, but coincidentally, the cornerstone to all digital security, you should know what if you or Safia or anyone for that matter found a pattern in these primes that they could crack any digital code. And she's like, look, all digital locks are based on randomly selecting primes. If you prove they're not random, then do you know how valuable, how dangerous you become? And she's like, I'm talking about bank accounts, defense systems, government records, classified reports. Everything is left wide open. Nothing stays hidden. And Edward's like, so would that be such a bad thing? And she scoffs. She's like, you don't get out much, do you? He's like, look. And she's like, Taylor. So she finally tells him her name. He's like, Taylor, whatever, a prime finder, a rule for finding primes, it's a theory, like capturing sunlight. It's not meant to be possible. She's like, but you think you found a way, that Safia found a way. He's like, I don't know, maybe. I can't know for sure until I see her thesis. So she's like, what else was in the book? He pulls out like sheets and reads, Cambridge doesn't feel safe anymore. And we see a couple of dudes like running upstairs, followed by Sophie. She's like, I am surrounded by a kind of, and it cuts to like her like reading it, a kind of dark geometry. So they're going up the spiral staircase. Outside her room, Sophie calls up to Safia. The dudes like knock. The door's like locked from inside. There's like a padlock. She continues, something I thought was impossible might actually be possible. There's a bunch of stuff barricaded against the door. This guy starts using his shoulder like to bang into it. And we can see she's in a bathtub. So it's like suicide, but was it really suicide or did they kill her? So she's like, if you're reading this, then what I feared most has happened. And although it's too late for me, you must shine a light on what's going on. And Edward continues, like, a light on what's going on. So he's like, he unfolds this other big paper and he's like, it's an abstract or something like that. It's a summary of her thesis. And Taylor's like, and? He's like, and it's the exact same area as mine. He unfolds this other paper, and it's a RIP page for the Kaplan, whatever, Research Institute. He explains to Taylor that it's a research institute there in Cambridge. He's like, they asked me to join, and she's like, but Ed, what? Her work could be there. He's like, I don't want any part of this. And she's like, no, Ed, Kaplan could be our key. Don't you see? It's the only way we figure this all out. And at this institute, that Stephen guy, he sits in front of a bunch of screens, like with whiteboards. So I don't know if he's spying on people too, or what that's all about. But so it looks like Kaplan may have contacted Safia, and then did they kill her? Did they make it look like she committed suicide? I mean, did they take her thesis, or did she hide her thesis? Because she was changing all those numbers. So did she destroy her thesis, or is it still somewhere? So that was episode 3. Episode 4 is now available. All right, Harley Quinn, season 5, episode 4, Breaking Brainiac. I'm so torn with this show, because I love the animation and I think it's good quality, but I don't know. And maybe I should look at the rate. Like, how is it? What do other people think? It's weird. On one hand, it's like, this episode, this wasn't even like a Harley Quinn episode. This was all about Brainiac. And it's cool in a way because, we're getting to see other characters in that. But is it, have they just run out of like Harley Quinn core stories? So we're seeing all this other stuff? Because, there's been a lot with like Poison Ivy, the Floronic Man, Ivy's origin and everything. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but this episode was basically all about Brainiac because we know he's in Metropolis, and so we find out like what the deal is. So it like kind of starts off. You see a view of the city, and it kind of turns like computer-like, and we see Brainiac, race the people, all his people, his world, his family. There's a ship. He left his wife and kid. So it's almost like it's the opening credits of the origin of Brainiac. So then in Kolu, Space Sector 1287, Brainiac, so he has a wife and kid, and they have a pet, like a space monkey. His wife's like serving food or whatever. It's not really food, but it's something like that. He's like, why so much festivity or whatever? And she's like, well, it's not every axial revolution that your husband gets promoted. So they talk very like robotic or whatever, like programming or whatever you want to call it. I think he says something like, he no longer has to travel for work. And he says it's hardly a promotion. He'll still be collecting information. So collecting information and gathering. So I was looking at, it's like, why are these words all capitalized? I'm like, is that just how he talks? Is like every word capitalized? So he's collecting information and gathering analytics regarding extraterrestrial technology and equipment and systems. But then he's like, regardless, he's relieved that he no longer has to leave for cigarettes, and it's like all in cap. So that's what he's doing. And he's like, right, Vril too, his kid. He hits his kid like on the shoulder, and he's like, whatever. So the kid is like, just a whiny, whatever teenage kid, if he even is teenage. His wife's like, hold that position. I want to generate a memory. And there's like a camera click. And she's like, all right, let us consume. So they plug these jacks into the side of her neck, into these like boxes she put down, so that's how to eat. And she's like, I tried a new recipe. Let me know if there's too much cadmium. And Brainiac's like, I think it's delicious. So then she says to the kid, she's like, Vril 2, no amusements until you drain your dinner. Because he's like got some computer screens like that. And he's like, I cannot consume until I actualize this level. And Brainiac's like, you will not actualize any level focusing on the move you are making in the present. It's about the next 5, 10, 20 billion future moves. And the kid's like, ah. And she's like, did you hear about Vardan across the street? He said his wife is close to powering down. And Brainiac's like, perhaps he has outlived his usefulness or something like that. And then he hopes that they'll sell their house because they have like a 3-shaped garage or something like that, blah, blah, blah. So it's like all this stuff. It's kind of funny and interesting, like how they talk and everything and interact, but it's like, who cares? So he starts buzzing. She's like, he says it's his superior, so he's got to take the call. And the kid like complains, like all he does is focus on work. And then she says something else, whatever. She's like, but it won't be for long. So he takes the call outside. Vril has to obtain a hyper ray, which allows the ability to shrink and expand objects, which obviously Brainiac uses. So then later he goes inside. There's like music playing. He's like, oh, we first heard, or something like that. They start dancing, and then she starts talking telepathically. And he's like, why you switch to this motor? She's concerned about Vril 2 and stuff like that. So he goes to talk to him in his room. There's like arguing, bickering. And the kid's like, oh, you wouldn't understand because, he's the adult, whatever. Blah, 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 some stuff. He's like talks to his wife. And then it's time for him to leave. It's the big Brainiac Skrull ship. Then it turns out Coco the monkey snuck on board. Brainiac took a picture of his wife and kid before taking off. So he goes to this other planet. He hovers over this building. He teleports, steals like the hypergun thing onto the ship. Returns home. He arrives and alarms beeping. The screen's like non-viable. So the planet was like destroyed somehow. And he starts searching through the rubble. Coco's helping. And then he sees an arm, so basically his wife's arm, and like her face mask. And he's like, I will never again have a home. And he says that, he'll soar to the cosmos raging against imperfect. Oh, because there's something that he said that, like he did some calculations, like 99% perfect or whatever. And I think his supervisor is like, well, what about that 1%? And Brainiac's like, oh, the 1%, that's fine or something like that. But because he ignored the 1%, so that meant that led to his planet getting destroyed because it wasn't perfect or whatever. So then, like years later, he comes up to Krypton. And he sends out drones. He converts things to make Kandor perfect, and then he uses the idea to his son because his son made some design, and Brainiac said it wasn't like quite perfect, but then his son like froze it so he couldn't change it or did something like that. So he has this idea, and he put it in this glass tube. So he decides that he can freeze time. So he uses the hypergun, he zaps Kandor, and it like kind of like freezes everyone. So I guess it's different. They're not alive in the Bottle City. I don't know. He puts it in a glass display like jar, and he decides that that's his purpose. So then he starts collecting other worlds and doing this. Goes around, time goes by, whatever. He sees Earth, does the calculations. It's the most unadvanced civilization he's encountered. He's like, this would be quite the challenge to perfect it. So then it cuts to last episode when Harley and Ivy got zapped. They got teleported onto his ship. He talks to them, or they complain about the place, or they're like, why don't you open a window, and like all stuff like that. And then he says something, he's like, whatever. But they keep insulting him. He left the intercom on so they can hear him. They like kind of mock something. So then he does something to Ivy, and her eyes kind of like turn white, and she gets like knocked out. Then he teleports Harley to him because he says there's something about her. He's like talking to Coco, and Harley's like, Coco is like, is that pile of monkey bones? So I guess Coco actually died a while ago, which is kind of sad because he's been out in space for who knows how long. Obviously, it's before Krypton exploded. And because, but then whatever. So he doesn't even acknowledge it. There's monkey bones next to his seat. But he says that he was close to perfecting Metropolis, and then she showed up because she has too much instability or something like that. She's whatever variable. So he's about to like get rid of her, like wipe her out. But then Lena teleports in, and she stops him from getting rid of Harley because she's like, they had a deal. She got like with things that she wanted or whatever. And she gets him to send them back without any memory of what happened. So they get teleported back. But Harley's feeling like she's missing something, like they're off. There's like all this like takeout food. And she's like, where'd all this food come from? And Ivy said that they're celebrating killing Jason twice. But then Harley still feels off. So, they eat all this food. And then they start talking about dessert. And she's like, I feel like a cup of cocoa. And she's like made like a Brainiac face in her mashed potatoes and with like green beans, whatever. So they forgot about what happened with Brainiac, that he teleported him, but for some reason Harley can still remember it. So that's the episode. So it's like I just don't worry. I mean, I guess they're gonna have to defeat Brainiac, stop him from destroying Metropolis or the world or whatever. But I don't know. So like I said, it was kind of fun to see this portrayal of Brainiac, where he's from and all that, but again, it's like, why? And I guess the other thing is like when we're like limited on how many episodes we get, and then you're gonna spend an episode on this non-main character episode. So I don't know. It's just a little weird. And as I'm watching this, it's like, okay, there was 3 episodes of Spider-Man, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, that came out. It's like I could have been watching that 3rd episode, because I only watched 2, which I'm going to talk about next. It's like, I could have watched the 3rd episode instead of watching Harley, because, I'm limited on time. It's a race for me to get through all this stuff while I'm working during the day. And so I don't know. And then the fact that I didn't mention at the beginning, Invincible, they dropped 3 episodes, and I could have watched 1 episode of that, but so that was Harley Quinn. I don't know how many episodes are, and the thing, I don't want to quit the show. But maybe I do. What do you think? All right, let's talk Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So, yes, 3 episodes have dropped this week, or whatever, when you're listening to this. We're only going to talk about 2, because that's all I was able to watch by recording time. And also, I feel like 3 would just be too much, because, you don't want a super-duper long Spider-Man segment. What if you don't like Spider-Man? You'd be crazy, but that's your opinion. Episode 3, Season 1, Episode 3, Secret Identity Crisis. I'm digging the show more. I'm really coming around. I think they did a good job with these episodes, and I actually need to watch the next episode too. So picking up from last week when Norman discovered Spider-Man's identity, so in his office he says to Peter, "So you're Spider-Man. We'll talk more soon, but your secret is safe with me." So Peter walks home. He's like in a daze. He keeps hearing Norman's words, like, "You're Spider-Man. Then he's with Nico. He hears Nico say it, and he's like, "What?" And she's like, "I said you're dead, dude. You lost." So they're playing video games in her room. And then she's like, "What happened last night?" because he, left her at the party. He says that he's sorry, and she's like, yeah, you should be. She's like, I had to have a conversation with someone named Sweaty Mike about how lo-fi music is timeless. And she's like, I hope your Oscorp thing was better, but only slightly. And he's like, it was surprising. So she says, hit her up if he wants a way out, because she has so many suggestions for burning bridges. And he's like, quit? He's like, no way. It was like, why would I quit? Everything is going fine. Better than fine. Super fine. And she's like, if you say so, Pete, but it sounds like you need to de-stress. And she's like, oh, the art house is doing a kung fu movie marathon tonight. And he's like, really? Wait, I can't. Mr. Osborne wanted to meet me for dinner to pick my brain. And she's like, I assume you mean that literally? Then there's a knock on her bedroom door, and there's this lady who says, Nico, it looks like one of her foster brothers made a bit of a mess. Could she help? And she's like, sure, Susan. So here we find out Nico is not living with her evil parents, and so she probably doesn't know about the magic, what is it thing, not a pendant, but she probably doesn't know about her abilities in that, her legacy, because she's living in a foster house. So it's like, okay. So she tells Pete to, stay on his toes, because CEOs are always trying to take advantage of the little guy or something like that. So he goes to this restaurant. He's trying not to be nervous, meeting with Norman. The place is like big and empty. So Norman's sitting at a table. He gestures for Peter to sit. And he asked if he had any trouble finding the place. Peter said that he might have gotten a little turned around, but it looks like he beat everyone else here. And Norman says that he wanted her conversations to be a bit more private, so he took the liberty of renting out the entire restaurant. Waitress comes up, asks if she can, what can she get for Mr. Osborne and his associate. Peter opens the menu. He sees the prices. It was like lobster tower, $250. Sous vide chicken, $100. Milanese veal shank, $145. Oro King salmon, $75. And Peter's like, could I please get, and he's like, whoa. He's like, I will have a glass of water, please. Norman chuckles. He's like, no, everything is on me, Peter. And he's like, Mr. Osborne, that's so kind, but really, I shouldn't. He's like, no, I insist. And he's like, well, if you insist. Later, he's like still eating. Norman's like, well, I must admit, your appetite is extremely impressive. I'd ask where you're putting all that food, but I imagine you burned quite a lot of energy during your part-time job. And Peter's like, look, Mr. Osborne, I know what you think you saw on that video yesterday, but after giving it some thought, I can only conclude that it's someone on your security team playing a prank on you. A prank by my security team? Yeah, that's got to be it. That is interesting. Mainly because the camera that captured that footage was one of my own personal security cameras, monitored by me and only me, meaning no one other than me has access to it. And Peter's like, that's why it's such a good prank. He's like, come on, Peter, you had been better off saying that you were friends with Spider-Man. And he's like, okay, you're right. I am Spider-Man. Just please don't tell my Aunt May. She's under enough stress. She doesn't need to know about this. Norman chuckles. He's like, look at you. Even when someone knows your secret, your biggest concern is the well-being of someone else. You're just as remarkable as the things I've seen you do as your alter ego. He holds up his phone. He's like, whether it's stopping a petty theft here and there, or saving a bus full of passengers from a runaway vehicle, Mr. Osborne, I don't... Peter, do you remember this? He shows a video from the alley. He's like, I do. Yeah, a few weeks ago, I stopped some muggers from robbing that guy. You also swung out of nowhere and saved that boy from getting hit by a truck. Do you remember that? He's like, yeah. That boy you saved is my son, Harry. From that day, I vowed I would find Spider-Man and repay him for saving Harry's life. It only took a moment of looking past a homemade suit to see the genius of his webbing, fluid yet durable, the firing mechanism on his wrist. So the question became, who created these things? Most of the greatest scientific minds are already working at Oscorp, but after checking the usual suspects, I realized the person wasn't among us. That meant they must be younger. Soon enough, I'd narrow it down to 4 brilliant minds: Amadeus, Asha, Jean, and you, Peter. I theorized that one of you could be assisting Spider-Man, so I started the Oscorp internship to keep an eye on each of you, and imagine my surprise when I discovered you aren't just assisting him, you actually are Spider-Man. And he laughs. So the only question now, Peter, is, what do you need? And he's like, sorry? What do you need? What can I do to make your life easier? As I mentioned,
Your webbing is incredible, but the rest of your attire could definitely use an upgrade. Night vision for your lenses, mild electric shock in the suit to ward off attackers, police scanner wired into the mask. Peter chuckles. He's like, I actually already have a scanner wired into the mask. And Norman chuckles. He's like, of course you do. Of course you do. You're an extremely clever young man, Peter. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm thinking we get you a suit with a bit more durable fabric, including an extensive GPS system. Could be more helpful. Am I right? I'm right. Okay. Maybe we add a drone. Is that too much? Yeah, it's a bit too much. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Mr. Osborn, I really appreciate you wanting to help me, sincerely, but I need to do this alone. The day I got these powers, I wasn't sure why. Why me? Why not someone else? Someone that could have been the next Captain America instead of some kid from Queens. But now I truly believe that I have these powers to help people, to protect them as Spider-Man. And if that means endangering myself, I'm okay with that. But you helping me could put you or the nice people at Oscorp in danger. You offered me an internship because you wanted to find Spider-Man. But maybe it's safe if neither Spider-Man or Peter Parker are working at Oscorp. He puts down his internship badge. And he stands up. Peter, I can assure you that I can take care of myself, but I respect your concern. I'll also respect your wishes while promising you that your secret will stay between us. That said, I do hope you'll reconsider staying at Oscorp. You're obviously more than qualified, and we're lucky to have you. Regardless of what Spider-Man does, Peter Parker has a bright future ahead of him. But if you do decide to back out of the internship, I'll completely understand. At the very least, I'd like to accommodate you for your first day. He takes out his checkbook. No, Mr. Osborn, you don't have to do that. Here you go. It's already done. It's the least I can do. Peter gasps. It's for $1,000. He's like, thank you again, Peter, on behalf of me and my son. So there's a couple waiting on the street for someone. Guy gets a text, and he's like, they said to put the money in the dumpster. And the lady is hesitant to put several $1,000s in the trash. So the guy's name's James, or she's Maria. And he's like, the guy is supposed to be legit. And if he's half as good as I've heard, we'll make that money back in no time. If not, we'll kick his butt and take our money back. So she puts the money in, and then the dumpster starts to transform. Legs kind of pop out. This grappling hook shoots up. It climbs up the alley walls. And in place of the dumpsters, there's a suitcase and a phone. So James gets a text, pleasure doing business with you. They open a suitcase and they chuckle, and she laughs with glee. Peter comes home. May's packing some boxes. He says Mr. Osborn told him to take the leftovers home. He's like, I don't know if you've ever had scallops, but they're pretty good. And he's like, what's with all the boxes? And she's just cleaning up, closet space. She figured she might as well go through stuff, sell a few things that they don't need online. He picks up this camera. He's like, you're selling this stuff? And she's like, I'm sure we can get a few bucks for it. I mean, that sewing machine is basically new. I think you're the only one that ever used it for your, what was it again? And Peter's like, home economics project? That's why I needed it. Nothing out of the ordinary or anything. And May's like, I'll list it as new. And Peter's like, I guess that's my point, May. I mean, most of the stuff is either new or, well, it belonged to Ben. He looks through the camera lenses and she sighs. She's like, I thought it would be hard, Peter, but it's okay. Sometimes things just got to get done, whether you want to do them or not. Okay, well, let's see what else I got hiding back here, huh? He sees 3 past due envelopes on a desk. So the next day at school, Nico's like, I can't believe you're going to tell Mr. CEO billionaire Norman Moneybags Osborn to take his job and shove it. And Peter's like, okay, I didn't say any of that. I'm not going to tell him to shove it, and I'm not even sure I should quit. She's like, Peter, I completely understand staying there to try to help your aunt, but I should say, if May knew the only reason you were staying at Oscorp was because of her, and he's like, she'd tell me to quit, I know. That's why this is so difficult. And then in the cafeteria, Lonnie yells out to both of them, and he's with Pearl. So Nico says that she brought her own lunch. So she's like, go ahead, I'll grab us a table. So Lonnie's says that, he's like, lunch is on me today, bro. And Peter's like, what? He's like, thank you, but there's no need to do that. He's like, no, man, I got you. He's like, I just found out from Mr. Taylor that we aced our first lab experiment. And Peter's like, no way, really? And Pearl's like, really? Lonnie's been bragging about it for the last hour. And Lonnie's like, it is a big deal. It's the first of many A+ for the Lincoln Parker Dream Team. And so he imitates the crowd, like, yeah. And Peter's like, well, I'm happy we got such a great grade, but
come on, you did more than your fair share of work. And Lonnie's like, yeah, but let me treat you. It's a huge week for us. The Ravens dominated the Gibbons, the football team. He's like, we're killing it, Mr. Taylor's class. Pearl's going to break like 30 records on her swim meet today. She like flexes her arms. She's like, argh. And he's like, you just started your internship. And Pearl's like, you should probably just give in and let him buy you lunch, Petey. So he's like, all right, you win, but I'm paying next time. And Lonnie's like, you drive a hard bargain, but I'll agree to that. So he's like, go grab some seats. And he pays. His card gets declined. He's like, oh, right. He's like, I forgot I chipped in on pizza after the game. And he looks in his wallet, there's some cash. And he just gets it. He's like, I'll just have the apple. So he pays for their lunch. He only gets an apple. He sits. Pearl's like, where's your lunch? She's like, don't forget, you shouldn't be eating light during training days. And Peter offers half a sandwich. He's like, so you practically own it. And he's like, no, it's cool. And his phone buzzes. It's his ma. He's like, he gets up. He's like, wait, slow down. Take a deep breath. He gets up. Pearl asks Peter how his internship's going. She's like, she bets that he's already impressed them and earned a full-time job. And he's like, well, it's kind of complicated. Then Lonnie comes up, asks Pearl if she could give him a ride home. And he's like, he'll explain on the way. As they drive, he thanks her. And she's like, no, it's fine. He's like, I've never been to your house before. It's like, I didn't realize you lived so far away. He's like, yeah, this isn't how I wanted you to come over for the first time. So they pull up, and there's like a police car outside. He's like, thanks, Pearl. He's like, you don't know how much I appreciate this. I'll call you later. So he's like, Dad, is everything okay? And he's like, hey, Lon, go sit with your mom for a bit. So he goes inside. Miles on the sofa. He's like, where's Dre? And she's like, in his room, and he'll be lucky if he ever leaves it again. So Lonnie's like, what happened? She says that she was getting ready to go to the laundromat when she opened the front door and found a cop walking up with his brother Dre. It's like he told her that Andre was vandalizing a building with some hoodlums calling themselves the 110th Street Gang. And Lonnie's like, since when is Dre hanging out with a gang? She's like, that's what I'd like to know. When I opened that door and saw the police, my heart dropped. And when I saw Andre standing next to him, I didn't know whether to be relieved or more afraid. And she starts like sobbing. So Lonnie's mad that, his mom's so upset. He busts open Dre's room. It's empty. The window's open. He took off. So this jeweler is showing off like these three, most expensive rings in her collection to the couple in the alley. So he's like something about not sparing any expenses when it comes to love. And the dude, James, like, yeah, I agree. And the lady's, she's like, in fact, we just might take all of them. And the seller like looks at the security guard. Then you can see James has like metal boots on. It's super obvious. No one, whatever. And Maria has like metal gloves or something like that. They power up, and from the street, security guard goes flying out through the glass door. Spider-Man is like taking some photos, like it's selfies and like birds and view from the rooftop. He's like, this is pretty cool. He's like, I bet Uncle Ben would flip if he knew I was getting pics on his camera from all the way up here. He like scrolls back, so it's like a digital camera. He sees a picture of Aunt May blowing a kiss. And he kind of like chuckles. And then there's one of him and May holding a happy birthday Uncle Ben banner. And then the police scanner talks about two armed and dangerous suspects at the jewelry store. Outside the store, they exit. The guard pulls his gun, and they have like bags of jewels or whatever. I'm assuming the dude like prepares to kick him with his like power exoskeleton legs, but then Spider-Man webs it, pulls it back, makes him fall like on his face, and he webs the guy up. And the lady's like, "Relax, babe." She's like, "I'll have you out in a second." Spider-Man's like, "Yeah, you can't tear through those." She powers up her hand, rips the webbing off, and he's like, "Holy!" So the dude tells him to try that web trick again, and now that he's ready for him. And Spider-Man's like, well, since you asked nicely, but the dude, he unzips back, and he's like the Flash, running super, or maybe I should say Quicksilver. He runs super fast. Then Spider-Man's like accidentally webbing like a bystander. And then the lady Maria or whatever, she's like, eyes on me. And she starts to attack Spider-Man, as he's dodging. And he's like, you brought a knife fight to a web fight? Because like her hands can make these like electrical like blades pop out. So he's dodging and dodging. Then the dude comes up and like bumps him at super speed. So he gets like knocked back, but then he jumps back up to his feet. He jumps like inside the building. The guy kind of like runs up there. The lady's like slices a lamppost, and it's about to fall like on some stupid bystander who somehow fell over, and he's sitting there like just watching it. So he webs and holds it up, and then they use this opportunity to attack him. Lonnie enters this like big like warehouse thing to space. He finds Dre playing like dominoes. He's like, Dre, And comes, and Dre's like, yo, calm down. And lots of other they're giving Lonnie the stink eye because these are all like gang people, gangbangers. He's like, are you kidding me? You got mom at home worried sick and you're telling me to calm down? You're lucky I'm not dragging you out by your neck. And he's like, man, how'd you even find me? Lonnie holds up his phone. He's like, you're on a family plan, genius? I can track your phone. Now, come on. The other thugs are laughing. They're like, seriously? Like a family plan? Dre like scoffs. And then two guys like kind of stand in their way. And Lonnie's like, hey, we're leaving. We don't want any problems. This big bearded man's like, neither do we. But looks like we got one. I mean, you so rudely walked into my establishment without so much as an introduction. But I'm a gracious host, so I'll start things off. I'm Big Donovan, leader of the 110th Street Gang. And he's like, Lonnie Lincoln. Oh, I know damn well who you are, kid. You're the talk of Harlem. See, you're NFL bound. Hell, I made a couple stacks off the Ravens myself, Lincoln. But despite me knowing who you are, I'm not going to let you walk out of here with one of my people. Lonnie's like, this isn't one of your people. It's my little brother, and he's not staying here. And he's like, see, now that's where you're wrong. Dre came to us. He's our little brother now, and nobody leaves his family. Well, not the way they'd like to. And Lonnie's like, look, man, he already got picked up by the cops once. He's no good to you. He's like, we don't have to make a thing out of this. And Donovan's like, sorry, superstar. It's not that easy. So then Lonnie's like, fine, me for my brother. And Dre's like, Lonnie? He's like, I join your group and do what you want. You leave my brother alone. And Donovan's like, all right. Can't lie. It's a hell of a trade-up. And Dre's like, Lonnie, that's crazy. Mom and Dad are going to flip if... And then Donovan's like, hey, kid, the grown-ups are talking. How about you go on home? He's like, I'm not going anywhere without my brother. And Lonnie's like, you heard him, Dre. Go home. Spider-Man gets like super kicked again. He's like smashes into a bus. He bounces off, lands on a taxi windshield. And he's like, hospital. Then the dude, the powered guy, he's like, so much for Bug Boy. Sirens are coming. There's a helicopter. Riot gear cops start coming up. So they just attack him all. They're fighting. Then Norman starts talking to Spider-Man through his comms. Spider-Man, can you hear me? And Spider-Man's like, hello, God? Spider-Man, it's Norman. Mr. Osborn, where are you? I'm in my office. I saw a stream online of your current predicament, and I figured I could help. And Spider-Man's like, well, thanks, but why can I hear you? I used one of Oscorp's communication satellites to hack into your phone and scanner. And he's like, oh, well, that's kind of creepy, but he's like, we'll discuss it later. Now, I've noticed your opponents are giving each other a wide berth. Strange, right? Yeah, it's a little weird considering all the PDA. That means the tech that they're using must be new. They aren't fully used to it, which means they're liable to make mistakes. The speed boots, and then Norman's like, nothing can go that fast without some kind of signal when it goes into overdrive. Try listening out for that, Peter. And he's like, right, can do, Mr. Osborn. He swings up, runs towards him. Dude sees him, chuckles. He's like, oh, ding, ding. His legs power up. Spidey listens, hears it. He jumps up right before he can like run into him. And the guy's like, huh? So Spider-Man chuckles. He's like, I dodged him. He yells back to him. He's like, wow, hey, buddy, you call that fast? You know, my old spider granny can run faster than you. The guy like growls at him, zips towards Spidey. He dodges. Lady's like standing yell. And she's like, will you just kill him already? Spider-Man runs. The guy's behind him. And he's like, please work. He spins webs to like the side of the buildings, pulls back, and the guy like can't stop himself from tripping over it. So Spidey does like a Matrix backwards dodge. The guy like tumbles into the street. The lady's like surprised. Spidey webs them and then like webs them up together. So they power up. The dude's like, you got to turn your gear off, and his leg starts like running, even though they're bound. And then zoom, 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 they start like running in a circle. Both of them are screaming, and then they're left on the ground with like their gauntlets like powering down. And she's like, my mother was right about you. The police come up to him, freeze, don't move. Before he swings away, he looks at the boots. He's like, it's that same symbol I saw on old Hothead's flamethrowers. So Norman zooms in on the computer screen. And so then later, like, thanks for your help out there. And Norman's like, oh my God, what are you doing up there? So Spider-Man's hanging upside down in Norman's office. He's like, don't scare me like that, jeez. And he's like, oh my gosh, Mr. Osborne, sorry, that was pretty dumb. Are you okay? He chuckles, yes, I'm fine. And I was happy to help you. Between us, it looks as if you needed it. Spider-Man's like, I mean, I would have figured it out eventually. No, I definitely needed the help. Actually, I've been thinking over your offer, Mr. Osborne. If tonight proved anything, it's that maybe I do need someone in my corner. Well, I'd be happy to offer you the help you need, but of course, I respect your wishes, and it's your choice to make. And he's like, yeah, and I've made my choice. He takes off his mask, extends his hand. Welcome to the team, Mr. Osborne. Norman shakes his hand. And then Lonnie is also shaking Big Donovan's hand as he gets welcomed to the 110. Lonnie stands just staring at his hand. He's like, what is he getting himself into? Season 1, Episode 4, hitting the big time. So Peter's trying to give a presentation at Oscorp, with the intern thing. He has no cards. He's nervous. The other interns are watching. Dr. Whitman finally slams on his fist. Parker, either put me out of my misery or stop talking. How do you expect to make this and make it in this field if you can't properly present your ideas? And he's like, well, I just, do you know what your problem is? You've got a lazy tongue. If you don't learn to speak up and speak your mind, you'll never be heard over all the other voices in the room that are much, much louder. And he's like, you mean like yours? The interns chuckle. If you like jokes so much, Pucka, let's talk about your absolute joke of an intern project proposal. Magnetic generator, huh? It sounds unwieldy, unreliable, and unnecessary. How much power could that rinky-dink design of yours possibly put out? I doubt enough to power a child's alarm clock. Oh, it might win you a ribbon at the science fair, but it certainly won't win you my approval. But please proceed. Maybe you'll dazzle me. He's like, so, in my presentation, I will cover, enough. Let Parker be a lesson to you all. If you come to me with weak pitches, I will tear them to pieces. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, the old guy, he's so hard on us. Yeah, you bet I am, because I will do what it takes to get you to perform. I will drive you like sled dogs through a night of holy terror, because that is how you win the Ida Trod people. And then Asha's like, night of holy terror. Got it. She's writing it down. So lights come on, and the security person is like, sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Osborne is requesting a meeting in his office. So Dr. Whitman smiles and kind of and then the security lady's like, no, doctor, not with you. He'd like to see Mr. Parker again. And Peter chuckles, Whitman grunts. Jean's like, raise your hand if you find it bizarre. Mr. Osborne always wants to meet with Peter. So they all raise their hand, even the security lady. Whitman doesn't. He just ignores it. Carla Connor's like, you all should be thanking Peter. He's obviously doing really well here, which gives the entire intern team a good name. So since Peter's leaving, I'll just go over our project schematics with you later, Bentley. He's like, I'm the arbiter here. I make the decision. And she's like, of course you do. And I can't wait for you to tell me how, what did you call it? Right, how unnecessary all my work is. And then she does a checkmate on the chessboard in front of him. He just grunts. And then she's like, Amadeus, why don't you present next? He's like, finally. So he's like, Pucker, take some notes on your way out. So then there's flashing lights and dance music. He's like, prepare to meet the future. So very showy. Peter goes up, opens the door to Norman's Osborne, gets smacked in the face, flies backwards, papers are flying. And then you hear, sorry, dude, I had no idea you were there. It's Harry. And he's like, oh, it's okay. My face barely hurts. So here's the thing. I guess Spider-Man has no spider senses. So Harry picks up his intern badge. And he's like, Peter Parker, new intern, here to see my dad? And he's like, yeah, here to see your, oh, whoa, you're Harry. And he's like, cool to meet you, man. Welcome to the top of Oscorp Tower. You're above it all up here. King of the world. They both chuckle. Peter's like, it's always so freaky getting off on this floor. I feel so out of place. Harry's like, hey, if this is the place you're supposed to be, then you're not out of place, right? He's like, it's just your dad is kind of intimidating. He's like, don't let my dad scare you. Look, dude, if you're way younger than him, if anything happens, he whispers, it's like, you can outrun him. They both chuckle. So I hope to see you around, Peter. So he goes in. Hey, Mr. Osborne, I just ran into your, Peter, perfect. You're here. Turn on do not disturb mode. So metal, closes over to Windows. Computer has a big red external warning. The phone gets a big do not disturb image on the screen. The door behind Peter locks and bolts. He's like, wow, this is some serious privacy. I wish I had it in my room at home so I could keep May out when I have girls over. Well, eventually, if I were to have a girl over, other than Nico, who is a girl, but more like a bud, not someone okay, Peter, this protocol is in place so we can talk about Spider-Man. So let's do that. He's like, oh, okay, hey, what are you watching? I'm surprised you haven't been following this. He turns the volume, image of like Cap and Iron Man with the Sokovia Accords. What's next? Newscaster lady says that with over 100 countries in agreement with the ratification of Sokovia Accords, it means that any superpowered individuals must register with the respective government or risk a fine with the respective government or risk even imprisonment. So she talks about the disagreement among the Avengers. After a skirmish at an airport in Germany, the group has scattered, and Captain Rogers and Barnes remain on the run. Peter's like, I heard things were crazy, but they're the Avengers. They'll patch things up, right? Maybe, maybe not. That's their problem to solve. You're your own hero. But all that Accord stuff they're fighting about, would that apply to me too? I will handle it. That's what I'm here for. Your focus is needed elsewhere, isn't? Yeah, I guess I've been trying to figure out what to do about the tricked out criminals I've been fighting. Yes. New York has become a very dangerous place. That's for sure. Now, before you go digging around in it, you need to take a look at what my secret projects division has put together. He kind of touches a wall or whatever, his handprint scanner appears there. And Peter's like, I can't wait to see their designs. I've actually had a few ideas of my own that I've been doodling out. He takes out his notebook with the classic Spider-Man costume drawings. Norman's like, we're already past the design phase, Peter. And then he's like, Norman's like, I rushed this operation into overnight manufacturing. Oscorp's best engineers now work around the clock for you, and they have no idea who you are. So there's this hologram, kind of like a mannequin, whatever. Norman scrolls through different designs, and then one that it's like the Prodigy costume, when he had the Identity Crisis mini arc, the web spinners, whatever you want to call them. So Norman puts his hand like this invisible screen, and the costume pops up. He's like, or Spider-Man's like, I'm not Thor, right? Because looking at this, all I'm hearing is, you are not worthy, he says in a deep voice. And Norman is like, you're underestimating yourself. Think of how much you've changed in your time as Spider-Man already. You'll grow into the suit. It reflects a true strength and true heroism. It also played really well with your demographics. He's like, I have demographics? So there's this lady walking on the sidewalk. She's looking at her phone. She's also kind of dodging people walking. And then the one punk thief kid that was after Harry, the nerdy one with glasses, he grabs the lady's purse and he ducks into an alley. So then he and this other guy look inside, and you hear, you guys must really be jonesing for some Werther's Originals. And he's like, huh? And you see he's standing on this sign, the Prodigy costume, his arms crossed. He's like, drop the purse. They both gasp, and the guy drops the purse. Good. Now I think he goes to jump down, but his cape got stuck on this outcropping, and he's just hanging there. He's like, what? So then he's trying to struggling. His feet are just in the air. One guy grabs a metal pipe, the other grabs a 2x4, and he looks at the guy. He says, are those things supposed to help me get down? And then we see the lady whose purse was taken to walk by, the entrance of the alley. Spider-Man's like, ow, hey, I'm not a pinata. And she takes this picture and she posts it. Norman sees it. He's like, ooh, wow. So the window opens behind him, and he tosses the cape on Norman's computer screen, peels off the helmet. I'm going to need to see some other options. At school, Lonnie has a rose. He's waiting out front for Pearl. And he's like, hey, I wanted to be sure to catch you and say thanks for the ride home the other day. She's like, so you waited outside for me like a stalker? Ah, that's so creepy. I'm touched. They laugh. And he's like, I know this isn't much, but I picked it out from my mom's garden. And if she found out, she'd kill me. So I must like you a lot, Pearl. And she's like, it's perfect. Smooch. She asked if everything's okay. She dropped him off, and he went radio silent on her. He says they didn't mean to. It's just, he got overwhelmed. He apologizes. Says his brother got into a situation. He's safe now, so it's all good. And she's, it's like, do you need another ride? And she's like, cute boys who bring me flowers get the ride for free. He's like, I got to pass. He's like, I still have some errands to run. And then she's like, just remember, you can always talk to me if you need to. And she's like, I know you want to be a tough guy, but nobody likes tough guys, Lon. And she leaves, and then his phone buzzes. Big Don, get here now. You're on the clock. So someone yells in the street, hey, look at that.
someone like flies by. Peter's in the Hornet costume now. So his flying backpack is like kind of giving out. He can't really like stay up. He's like all wobbly. People are watching. Norman says that the Hornet backpack allows him to free up his wrist for his stingers. And he's like, my what? And he like looks at his wrist. There's kind of like a little screen. He accidentally arms something. He can't shut it off. And like 6 little mini rockets fly out and hit this guy's hood. But look, they're like little tiny stingers. So they're not like missiles, like I thought when I first saw them. So he says there's a lot of stuff to get used to. He's like, am I technically even Spider-Man anymore? And Norm's like, well, why do you need to be a Spider-Man at all? And he's like, oh, well, because a spider bit me? And Norman's like, well, it's quite a narrow niche. You should be open to expanding your identity options. So he's kind of flying low over the sidewalk. People have to like duck and scatter. And he says, he doesn't know if it's worth changing his name just to use like a backpack that's like impossible to control. And Norman says that it has a built-in gyroscope, so quit fighting it and he'll level out. So he starts to get it. He's like, hey, this is actually pretty cool. And then he gets like splattered on a bus window. The driver's just like, hits the windshield wipers and he slides off. So he barely makes it back to Oscorp. Next, please. So Lonnie's at the big like gang warehouse place. He's like doing homework. He's like, writing his notebook. And the guy talks to Big Don about some others moving in on their turf and not showing an ounce of respect. Something like the Scorpions. Big Don's like, they're not the only ones who owe me some respect. And he looks at Lonnie's like on a sofa. He goes around, rips a notebook out of his hands. Does this look like a damn study hall in here to you? And he's like, sorry, I'll put it away. But instead of handing it back to him, she like whips it down on the floor. And the thug's like, check out Mr. Einstein over here, studying like a big brain. And it's like, okay, so that's a horrible thing to try to get an education. So as Lonnie gets up, he mutters, not like anyone's doing anything around here anyway. Excuse me? Sounds like Mr. Lincoln here wants something to do. Well, don't worry. I got just a job for you, superstar. I'm making a group order at a place called La Frescas. It's a killer spot. The one guy's like, yeah, their burritos are out of this world. At the park, this little girl, she's tying her shoes and she loses her balloon that she was holding. It floats up to a tree, but in a tree, it kind of like something shakes and there's like a clawed hand that kind of like reaches out and then something jumps out at her, unfolds, and it's Spider-Man dressed as Dusk. So he kind of has like kind of wings under his arms or whatever. He hands her the balloon back. She takes it, starts crying. And he tries calming her down. He's like, no, I'm not scary. I'm just your neighborhood flying spider. She screams some more. Her mom yells, that freak scared my daughter. Get him. Watching Norman sighs. Spider-Man flies away. He's like, okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Osborn. This suit is another bust. A little girl just screamed when she saw me. And Norm's like, damn, I was afraid of that. What if we added a smiley face to the mask? Peter's like, okay, that's even creepier. None of these suits are right. I feel like an idiot. He's like, calm down. I know this is frustrating, but it's all part of the development process. Lonnie goes to La Frescas. There's a lady with like a scorpion tattoo like on her arm. And then he goes inside. The guy at the counter is like, you have an order? Or he's like, order or something like that. And he's like, I'm picking up for Big Donovan. Everyone in the restaurant turns and looks at him. And then the guy, like, he gives him this big bag of food. The lady and 2 guys like block the door. Others inside like stand up behind him. The lady's like, tell Big Don we'll be seeing him soon. And then she steps out of the way as he walks out. One guy follows him outside. Lonnie starts running. He runs, the guy's chasing him. He's running, goes up the stairs, makes it onto the train just as the doors close. Tries catching his breath, and he like punches the seat next to him. And then he arrives at the hangout. They're like, well, look who's back. Big Don says that, he's like, was there a big line or something? And Lonnie's like, I almost got jumped out there, and you knew it would happen, didn't you? Who was that woman? And he's like, yeah, let me guess. Dark green hair, looks that could kill. Also, she looked like she could kill you. Her name's Carmilla Black. She's a lieutenant for the local riffraff. The one other guy's like, La Fresca's in on her group's turf. So Big Don's like, they're the crew that showed up recently. Call themselves the Scorpions. Nasty group. If you thought Carmilla was unfriendly, the guy running the whole operation is an even bigger psycho. And Lonnie's like, that's coming from you? And he's like, boy, Mac Gargan can make me look like
Dalai Damn Lama. He's ruthless. Guy picks fights with other gangs just for the sport of it. Lonnie's like, your beef with him didn't involve me until you sent me there using your name. And Donovan slams his fist down. Wake up, Lincoln. The Scorpions were always going to be your problem. The 1/10 is our street. This is our neighborhood. You might not like the way I do things, superstar, but you wouldn't even be able to walk down to your house if it wasn't for us. You want to protect your family? Without us pushing back, Gargan and Carmilla would be knocking on their front door. And Lonnie's like, if it gets too bad, I can get my family somewhere safe. And he's like, where are you going to go, superstar? Even if he did move out, the thing about Gargan is he used to find people for a living. And now his go-to gal has seen your face. And he's like, yeah, because of you. He's like, regardless of the reason, Gargan knows you roll with me now. He'd track you down just for fun, and it wouldn't be too hard with you popping up all over the local sports page every week. Face it, kid, if you're alone, no one will be able to help you. With us, you at least got protection. So Lonnie looks around, then he unclenches his fists. He sighs. He's like, I don't want to be lied to anymore. Don, he's like, you can't use me like a pawn. And he's like, yeah, once I know for sure that you're loyal, you won't be. Now, I suggest you grab a bite to eat. After all, you worked so hard to get this food. Peter returns to Oscorp, and Norm's like, Peter, I owe you an apology. I know I've been throwing a lot at you, but it's only because I want you to be equipped for whatever's out there. And he's like what? I don't know. I mean, nobody does. The city has grown accustomed to loss, destruction, chaos, all caused by events we barely understand. Peter's like, my uncle used to say, no one suffered than New Yorkers. Your uncle was right. Toughness is what helped me build this company. But what is Oscorp worth if I can't use it to give back to the city, our city? And Peter's like what it's worth in US dollars? I think several billion. I'm serious, Peter. Now that we're working together, if you're not the best hero you can be, then I failed. Peter's like, no pressure. That's why I've been forcing innovations on your suit. Why I've been pushing the envelope, because we're in the middle of an arms race that started way back when the Avengers first formed. And Peter's like, when they defended the city from the invasion, I mean, they stepped up because we needed them. And that need is still there. We need more heroes than ever. Stronger, better heroes. Heroes that aren't one bad day away from a gamma-fueled rampage. Heroes that won't decimate an entire country trying to shut down a mad AI they themselves created. We need heroes who will take accountability for their actions and live up to what they represent. Peter's like, I'm scared I'm never going to be good enough to live up to what you're offering. You will. I'll help you. And while those accords force the Avengers to reckon with their past mistakes and shortcomings, you and I will be perfecting what comes next, the first in a new generation of heroes. And he goes sort of like the vault thing again. It doesn't matter what those other potential suits offered. They want you. You're Spider-Man. And this, the case opens up, is Spider-Man. And Peter's like, oh. And he's like, isn't it how you always pictured it? And Peter's like, I mean, it's amazing, but I don't know. You will know, though, as soon as you try it on. Out on the streets, a dark image swings by, and then again, people are like, oh, what was that? And then it's kind of building up the suspense for us. He's running on his suit, he's jumping, swinging, and then he lands on this reflective window, kind of like in a Tobey Maguire movie, I think it was. So he has a white and black costume, kind of like the Future Foundation one. And then he's like, woo-hoo! He's like, yeah, the aerodynamics is top notch, but no buts until you see it in real action. It's like, yeah, too bad it's totally dead. No one's committing crime right now. It's New York City. Someone's always up to something. So there's a guy sits in a van in the parking lot. A guy and two ladies run out. They get in. They drive outside. The police are waiting outside the garage. So the driver just wants to plow through them. The police chase. Spider-Man's nearby. A bunch of cars are getting plowed, and his truck skids. There's a mini explosion. So Spider-Man has to decide to chase the van or help the cars that are stuck in the crash, and there's the flames. So the van's driving. There's one lady, she jumps out of the back with the money. She's like, I'll catch up with you later. So they're all Russians or something like that. Spider-Man hears a guy stuck in the flames. He hesitates and jumps through. He's like, I'm fireproof? And the guy's like, I'm not. But he saves him. And he's like, thank you. So then he goes to Norman, goes through the window, takes off the mask. He's like, okay, I'll admit, I wasn't sold at first, but that was so awesome. We have a winner, Mr. Osborn. Norman's kind of at his neck, motioning, ixnay. Harry is sitting next to him and sees his face. Holy crap, you're Spider-Man? Norman like face palms. Peter puts his mask behind his back. He's like, no, I'm not. So again, no spider sense. Because even when he comes out, we can clearly see Harry sitting next to him. But Peter just totally missed it. No spider sense. So the lady who jumped out of the van watches like a reporter. She's looking at news on her phone about the high-speed chase. Mikhail Sisevich, Dmitry Smerdyakov, and Roxana Volkov were all taken into custody. Their accomplice, a woman known as Mila Masaryk, is still at large. I don't know if those are any people. The names don't sound familiar, but I mean, they made a point of listing them all. She turns off her phone and she walks out of the alley, knocks on a garage door. It like rolls up. This guy turns around. He has like a lab coat with like the Infinity logo, so he's the one must be making it. It's Doc Ock. He's got the glasses and like the short haircut. Miss Masaryk, or whatever you say it, how can I help you this evening? And that's where it ends. So we got Doc Ock. I'm assuming it's Doc Ock. But yeah, no, I did look up the credits and it's in Doc Ock, or Otto Octavius. So that was episode 104. So 105 is out, and then this week we get 6, 7, 8, and then 9 and 10 next week. It's crazy. But I mean, it's a good show. Like I said, I'm liking it more and more. All right, so just briefly, I want to talk about Hellraiser. Clive Barker's Hellraiser. So it's remastered. It played in theaters. It's Fathom Events, 2 nights only. I love the movie. I love Clive Barker. I had to go see the movie. Even though I've seen it so many times, it's to the point where like I can quote like almost all the movie. Be one of those annoying people. And the thing about the movie, I was thinking about this, as I watched it, like kind of like before and after and everything. It's one of my favorite movies. I've never like sat down and ranked all my movies, so I don't know exactly where it would lie. But there's just something about it, and I don't know. I'm trying to remember like when I first gravitated to Clive Barker. Like what was the first? I don't know if it was Weave World or The Great and Secret. No, it wasn't Great and Secret Show, and it wasn't Cabal. I'm trying to remember. Maybe I don't know if it was. Maybe it might have been the Books of Blood, but I just started reading Clive Barker books because I was like big into Stephen King books, and I don't even remember how I started. Maybe because there's like I think it was a quote. I've seen the future of horror, and its name is Clive Barker or something like that. Quote from Stephen King. So I started reading his books and everything, and so like with Hellraiser, I'm almost positive, because if it came out in 1997, I'm pretty sure I didn't see it in the theaters, then. And, but I did see it I must have seen it at home, because I know I still had the videotape. So I probably bought that, and, just the, Pinhead with the nails, it's like, oh my goodness, this is so interesting. And the thing about the movie, so the movie only has it was $1 million budget, and apparently it made $30 million at the box office, which is $1 million versus 30. So if you look at that, it made 30 times its budget, which is crazy. And I think what I like about the movie is it's kind of simple in a way, even though there's like so much like introduced into this movie. So it's kind of conflicting when I say it, because when I say simple, it's almost demeaning, like there's nothing there. But by simple is, because it mainly takes place in this house, and even though the house has like multi levels, it's almost feels very narrow. And the other thing, which I was wondering, I should like look this up, is like, where was this movie? Where is this supposed to take place at? Because looking it up, it's like a lot of it's filmed in London, all this, but it's like a lot of people, they have like American accents. Julia is English, but Kirsty and her dad and everyone. So that's always confused me, because like it has like a London, like an England feel, just like the style of the house and just everything. But it takes place in this. It feels like a little house. It feels like it's a narrow house, but it's kind of big.
where the deeper stuff comes in, because we're like introduced to all the stuff. You got the puzzle box, so the lament configuration. You got the Cenobites, and it's like, okay, we got Pinhead, we got the female, we got Butterball, we got Chatterers. Like, who are these people? What is their deal? And then just how it's. I'm going to try to slow down because I'm getting so excited. I'm just going to. I don't want to talk too fast. But it like starts off where you got Frank. He's at some dingy place, whatever, and he buys this puzzle box. And and then he's messing with it, and then the hooks start digging into him. It's like, what the heck is going on? And as I explained, so he like wanted this, he sought this out because it's like the pain and the pleasure, all this stuff is just weird and disturbing. And the fact that you got these Cenobites, like that they're kind of like overseeing this stuff, and it's like, what else do they do? Apparently, because at the end of the movie they play like this interview from like 2002 or something like that. From Doug Bradley, who plays Pinhead, and he mentions, which is I would love to see this, but he mentioned that they actually filmed a scene where he and the other Cenobites were kind of like sitting in cells or something like that, kind of like waiting to have to go out, like for whatever their next job is or next duty or whatever. Because he's like, that wasn't used. He's like, I've never seen the footage, so it was filmed, but they never used it. So that's weird that we haven't had like a complete or uncut and maybe it just didn't make sense, or maybe it wasn't necessary. Also, like reading into it or up on this, there was a lot of problems because we're talking 87. There's a lot of like censorship, to get a good whatever rating. That they were saying that there was some stuff that was too gruesome. There's like a scene, like a image with like the hammer smashing a guy's head that had to be cut down. I think there was like a naked murder or something like that, so they had to change it to a closed murder. There's like sucking on fingers. There's like a close-up. I guess that was too. There was a lot of like stuff that was deemed too erotic for the movie. And there's a part where like Frank is. I guess they were only allowed like 2 thrusts of his butt, and like 3 was too much or something like that. So that's the thing about Clive Barker, which sometimes he gets a little too erotic, not like overly erotic, but most of his stuff is like pure horror. But sometimes it veers off a little bit, and that was interesting because it wasn't always like that. But then sometimes things get a little dark, and yeah. But with Hellraiser, it's just I think it's for me it's mainly just Pinhead. The idea that's an image of all these nails and it's like, what is this dude's problem, or what is his story? Where is he at? What's going on? And it's just kind of freaky in a way. So it's not like your typical horror movie. It's not a slasher movie at all. And it's like on a different level. And I think that's what's always fascinating me, because you had like your Friday the 13th and your Michael Myers and your Jason, or I said Friday the 13th, your Freddy Krueger. You had all those movies, totally different thing. And it's just, I don't know, it's just so fascinating just watching this movie. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know what it is about it. Now, apparently, because, the movie, there was like trivia in the beginning. Apparently, Clive Barker wanted like some techno music, this band called Coil, I think, to do the music. But I don't know if the studios are like, nah. And then they got, what's his name? I think it's Christopher Young. They got him to do it, and that music, I love the music. That Hellraiser music is like just so it's just so perfect and everything. So it would have been. I'm glad. I'm sorry, Clive. I'm glad they nixed that idea and they changed it, because he had done music for Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and Invaders from Mars in 1986. So just look up the Hellraiser soundtrack. It's so good. So yeah, that's the movie. And where I'm a little torn, because I also like Hellraiser 2. Clive Barker wasn't as involved with that, I believe, from what I recall, like from the Fangoria days. And I think like what he said, he's like, that's not the movie I would have made. So I feel like he wasn't totally into it. I found that movie also interesting because it showed us more of like the other side that we got like hints of in this first movie. And so, it kind of explored things more. I didn't really like what happens with Pinhead. We see like his origin and like what happens to him at the end. I was like, yeah, I don't agree with that. He gets kind of depowered or whatever.
But there's some cool things about that. Hellraiser 3, I mean, it's just, for me, it's just 1 and 2. Because like 3 with that doctor center, I know I shouldn't be going into this, but yeah, so a lot of I don't even know if I've seen all the Hellraiser movies, because it just gets so bad. And then there was like kind of like a reboot movie which had a different, someone else's Pinhead, and it wasn't Doug Bradley, and it just felt so wrong from the beginning. And that was a weird movie. I know I talked about that on a secret podcast episode. So yeah, I mean that's. Oh, but the main thing is it's remastered, so it looks really good. And I guess they remastered it from the negatives or whatever, all that stuff. So it looks really good. I mean, it's just so clear. But it's kind of a dark movie, and it's not dark, but it's not like super bright or anything like that. So it's just, like I said, it may not be like the best movie, and I don't think many people would say it's their favorite movie, but there's just something about it that I don't know. I find it just kind of interesting, yeah. So when I saw I was playing, it's like I have to see it. I don't need to spend the money, but I would love to see it on the big screen. So I'm glad I did. And it was only 2 nights, unfortunately, but it is available. I'm assuming Arrow. I don't. Maybe I should buy it. I probably could have bought it for my ticket price, but whatever. So that's Hellraiser. So if you're a fan of horror movies, you should definitely look into it. Okay, then our main movie feature is Heart Eyes. So this is a weird thing. I feel like for me, maybe I'm just like not in tune to everything. I feel like this movie kind of came out of nowhere. It might have been like January when I first heard about this. I'm like, wait, what? Heart Eyes? What's this? And I was like, Olivia Holt? Oh, I love Olivia Holt. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I just find her super cool, super gracious. I'm so blessed. I'm so lucky I had the opportunity to interview her at like WonderCon and Comic-Con for Cloak and Dagger. That show, I just really liked it. I thought she did a good job in it. The show wasn't perfect. There's some things I wasn't super duper crazy about, but it was pretty intense. And I haven't seen everything that she was in. I remember the year my daughter went with me to the Comic-Con. Like, she knew her, and I always forget the show. I think she was in, I don't think it was a Disney show. It might have been a Nickelodeon show, but she was in something. So my daughter like kind of knew who she was. And I mentioned before that show Cruel Summer, I won't go into again, but that was, she was just really good in that. So I like her. I think she's really cool, and I'm glad she's in this movie, that she's like in the lead of this. And she does a good job in it, and she does a good job playing is she a scream queen now? I mean, she's, or what do they call it, the final girl, or so I think she does a really good job with that. Let's see. So Rotten Tomato, where are we at with that? I'm kind of surprised with it. I'm glad with this. It's at a 83% on Rotten Tomato. Audience score is a 73%. Okay, so audience. Sometimes they can be picky, whatever. If you like Scream movies, you'll definitely like this. This is from the audience. Funny and violent, 9 out of 10. There's got to be one. Great story and captivating. Such entertaining movie. Great acting and a few good jump scares. I'm waiting for a good little flick that adds a lot of humor to the proceeding. I think your appreciation of film depends on how forgiving you are of the humor. Moves along. Okay, so you get the idea. And then the Heart Eyes killer shtick isn't always clear, but the inventiveness of this is from critics. Inventive slaughter streak is. Gorehounds won't be disappointed. Romance fans have plenty to gaze at. In Holt and Gooding, everyone goes home happy. So that's the other thing. This is kind of a weird movie. It's a horror movie. It's a slasher movie, but it's also like a rom-com, and they do a good job packing it all in. It's just because it's weird that you got all this stuff, because there's bits of humor, and with the horror aspect, sometimes it's almost like a black comedy stuff, like where things get a little dark and a little almost quirky. So on that, sometimes I felt it was not really jarring, but it was off a little bit, and it was like weird because wait, what kind of movie is this? What's going on? And there was a couple performances I wasn't super crazy about. That's just me. Like the one is Olivia Holt, like her boss character. It was just
again, it felt a little like not necessarily over the top, but it was there's just felt off to me. And then I gotta say, the other lead in this, Mason Gooding. I don't think I've seen him in anything. So okay, so he's a son of Cuba Gooding Jr. I didn't realize that. He's a recurring role in the television series Ballers, starring role in the teen drama Love, Victor. He also appeared in films Booksmart and Fall. So sometimes I feel like and I don't know whether it's the script, the directing, or if it's just his acting. I don't know what it was, because I don't want to say it was his delivery or this or whatever, because maybe that's what they're looking for. But I felt like, and maybe it was like the way he was written, the way his character carried himself. But sometimes how he delivered his lines, or just the way it just, I don't know, it just felt like I said, it felt a little off to me. That was the only other thing. But I mean, he was fine. But I think it just goes along with kind of like the almost absurd, outrageous nature of the movie. So I think that's what they were looking for with the way he handled himself in some scenes and stuff like that. So, okay, that's fine. But so what the story is about is there is a killer that basically kills people, like couples, on Valentine's Day. And the thing is, he moves around different cities, so you never know where he's going to, Valentine's coming up, and it's like, oh, we're safe here in San Francisco, because, he was in Chicago, he was in, New York or whatever, and then all of a sudden it starts happening. You have that, and basically the story with Olivia Holt, she's working at like an ad agency. She recently broke up with her boyfriend, but he moved on, and he's dating someone else right away. And even though she broke up with him, it still hurts, and she's kind of stalking his account. And then she does this ad campaign, and her boss hated it, and they bring in the other guy, because he's this freelance guru, whatever, this expert guy. So they want him to come in, and Olivia Holt, thinks she's going to get fired, that he's going to get her job or whatever. They're supposed to work together, and she doesn't really like him so much. And I guess they ran into each other at a coffee shop, so it almost seemed like there was a connection there. But I think she's a little put off as well, because he's supposed to be the good-looking, smart, whatever guy, and he's a little smarmy, and so it's he thinks he knows everything, but she's very stubborn, and so you kind of got this conflict there, and then. The killer sees them together and I guess assumes that they're together. There's a reason for that. I won't say, give that away. But they're we're not together, and then basically they're on the run from this killer, trying to not get killed. And again, like I said, things get a little weird, little funny, and stuff like that. Also, it's weird because Jordana Brewster is in the movie. And the funny thing is, there's like a Hobbs and Shaw reference about who was the other guy then? Oh, because Devin Sawa, he was in Idle Hands, Final Destination. Maybe he didn't do. I was because he and Jordana, they were detectives, they were Hobbs and Shaw, but yeah. I don't know if I mentioned the budget. So the budget is $18 million. It made $1.1 million on the preview nights. It's estimated to make $7 to $8 million. So I wonder if it'll do more during Valentine's Day weekend. It's interesting that they opened it the week before Valentine's Day. So I'm not sure why that is. Maybe they figured couples aren't going to go see this on Valentine's Day. I don't know. We'll see how it does next week. But it was weird that, again, my theater didn't have a Thursday night preview showing. I don't know what's happening with my theater that they're not doing that. So I had to go to the next theater to town over, and it's fine. I like the theater as well. But I want to go to my I got my loyalty, whatever. I want to go to my theater. So like I said, they do a good job with the movie, and I haven't talked the kills. There's some interesting kills. It's clever. I was just really impressed because, I think I said it. Horror movies, when they try making new horror movies, sometimes they're cliche. It's like you've seen this so many times. So I think they just did a really good job just with the whole package and everything, and just trying to, the whole idea, like to look at a heart shape or heart eye, whatever. It's an interesting design and everything. Again, it is something different to try to come up with something new. I'm very impressed with what they did. But Olivia Holt, she just, she's got the screams down, she's got the running, she's got the fighting, and she just really does it all. So, I hope people take notice of her and, she gets more opportunities because I think she did a really good job, and you should see the movie. If you're a fan of horror movies, it's 80-some% audience and critics. So people are, and this is a horror movie we're talking about, but it's a horror rom-com. So, it's just weird how it's almost like this interesting lab experiment. It's just seeing all this stuff put together, but they're not just like crammed together. Because, a lot of times they try mixing genres. It just doesn't, it feels too forced. It's like, what is going on? It just gets convoluted. But for the most part, not completely, but it works for the most part. So I would suggest checking it out unless you just do not like horror movies. And, it's not something to take totally serious. This is different from like Presence. Presence is, more serious, whatever tone. This gets kind of goofy, scary. There are some jump scares, whatever. There's some slightly funny, wacky things, but there's some gruesome stuff as well. So it's worth checking out. I don't think there's anything else more for me to say, but yeah, so I enjoyed it. And with that, that is going to be this week's episode. Thank you for listening. Thanks to Andrew Loken for being an awesome supporter. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Any amount you can commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the secret podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 minutes of podcast entertainment every single week. I did an off-of-mind topic about Severance last week. Just dive in, just talking about the ideas and the concept and how it's weird or cool or bad. I may go back to Amazing Spider-Man this week, just jump back because I'm curious to see what happens next, even though it's Kazar or Kazar. But Spider-Man doesn't have his memories, so we got to find out what's going on. But if you can't commit to a monthly commitment, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or two. That's ko-fi.com/gmanfromheck. What is the movie for next week? For Valentine's Day, we got Captain America, Brave New World, right? Pretty sure that's what it is. I am super looking forward to this. I can't wait. I hope it's good. I'm really curious to see how, just everything about it. And I'm trying to avoid, I don't even know like what the main like nemesis is. I mean, is it the leader? I don't know. So I'll find out soon. So I can't wait to see that. Other stuff, we're going to have obviously, Severance, Prime Target. So we'll do probably two Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Mans, which will put me like one back, because 3 or more next, you already talked about that. Probably Harley Quinn, but then I don't know about Invincible because 3 episodes are out already. So next week, how many are there going to be? 4? Is there only 1 episode dropping? And then I'm trying to think of something else is starting up. Cobra Kai is, I think, coming up this month too. I don't know. We'll see what I can accomplish. Hopefully something, and hopefully you're okay. You're fine with everything. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you have a good Valentine's Day if you care about that at all. I hope you're staying out of trouble. I hope you remember, be good to each other.